Okay. Okay.
Hello and good evening on this very important and historic night. I'm Mia Gradney along with Lynn Cannon, political analyst Bob Stein. We have you covered tonight in our midterm elections edition of KHOU 11 News right here on Facebook, Periscope, YouTube, wherever you're watching us from.
Yeah, the polls about to close at 7 except for 9 locations in Harris County. In case you have not heard, there was a lawsuit to extend those polling locations until 8 o'clock tonight because some folks could not vote there when they first got there. There was a delay. Bob, thanks for joining us as usual. This is another big night, huge turnout. What are the big takeaways you're looking for tonight?
It's just an incredible turnout. I'm waiting to see what happens on Election Day. How many voters here in Harris County in the state? We all thought that early voting was extremely high, and it looks like it might be as much as 75% of the total vote cast for the total election. But clearly here, we may come very close to what the turnout was in 2016. There's no precedent for that. I don't recall in the 41 years I've worked at this station that we've seen a midterm election turn out not only as many voters, of course there are more of us in Houston, but the percent.
The midterm elections are very different from a presidential election. So what is driving people to the polls? What are the issues?
Clearly the president, who said himself that he's on the ballot, he's the person that matters. I think the other big variable here is the competitive races for Congress. You're seeing, of course, at least 3 very competitive races here in our region. You're seeing a race up in Dallas for Pete Sessions' seat, and the enormous amount of money. I mean, the Democrats have outraised and outspent the Republicans, but both parties have raised terrific amounts of money, and that drives voters to the polls.
And we've been asking all day, Bob, that this is a referendum, whether this is a referendum across the board on the president, yes?
Well, it is to some extent. I think if you're looking at the national scene, particularly for the House races, Senate races, but here in Houston, here in Harris County, here in the state of Texas, I think there's something else going on. Sure, there's a referendum on the president, but that referendum was won 2 years ago when the president won handily, but not by historic numbers. Something else is happening, and we've been talking about this for several years, and that is a demographic change in Texas. We're seeing many, many more voters show up. Many of them are younger, under 35, many of them are color, and we're seeing something else that we don't like to talk about, and that's a lot of voters leaving the electorate. People are passing away. They're dying, and there's a very different character to the voters who are coming in and replacing those older voters. Something that I had not realized was that voters under 35 in 2016 only turned out at 40%. In a presidential election, only 40% of people under 35. In this election, as of Friday, before today, but as of Friday, over 50% of voters under the age of 35 had already cast a ballot in a midterm election. That's an enormous change.
Yeah, so we'll have to see, Bob, how this plays out given the numbers you just talked about.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Our political analyst, Bob Stein, he's going to be here with us throughout the evening tonight as we talk election results as they come in, as we talk about all the different races, not just here locally, but also as well on the national scene too.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Len Cannon.
And I'm Mia Gradney. Welcome to a special midterm elections edition of KHOU 11 News. The polls have just closed with the exception of those 9 polling locations.
Yeah, we got a bit of a wrinkle and a twist in today's elections. We'll be telling you about that. We're waiting for the first numbers to come in. As Mia just mentioned, polls closed at 7 o'clock for most locations, but a select few are staying open 1 hour later.
That's right. Grace White is here with us to explain what happened this afternoon. Grace?
Well, there were problems at several polling locations in Harris County. The Texas Civil Rights Project filed a lawsuit, and a judge granted their request to keep the polls open until 8 o'clock. This impacts 9 polling locations in Harris County, and here's the list. They're all again in Harris County only. Iglesia Trinidad on Bobcat Road, Metcalf Elementary on Queenston, Evelyn Thompson Elementary on Casa Grande, the Hampton Inn on the Katy Freeway, Fiesta on Kirby, John Marshall Middle School on Bluebonnet Place, Lone Star College Cypress Center, and Houston Community College A-Leaf Center. We were out at Marshall Middle School this evening. It's on that list of locations staying open later. We met people who tried to vote this morning and ended up coming back tonight. They were happy to see the polls staying open.
We just want to make sure that everybody is allowed to go in, vote for whoever they want to vote for, without having to go through too much hassle and too much grief, and be dissuaded. And that's I think the main problem.
Harris County announced it will not be releasing early vote totals at 7 o'clock. They'll wait until 8 o'clock, so voters at these 9 locations will be able to cast their ballots. Again, these 9 polls, all in Harris County, will stay open until 8 o'clock. Lynn and Mia.
All right. Glad that they extended it by 1 hour for those people who missed the opportunity this morning. And we want to go ahead now, go live to Levi Ismail. He is at that Fiesta Mart that Grace just mentioned that faced problems this morning that is now staying open until 8. Levi?
Well, this is one of those 9 locations, but you couldn't really tell unless you see the electioneering that's happening outside here on this Fiesta right off Kirby. Now, they had to bring the line inside just moments before we actually brought you the picture here. And one of the things that seems to be causing an issue is because of the electioneering and some of the folks who, and just like this, you get people who have voted, but you also get the folks who are coming in to vote, and the interaction between the electioneering and those voters, this seemed to be a little too much. I spoke with the gentleman who's actually the election judge inside, and he said that right there you can see the glass is open and you can see the folks voting inside, but you also see the signs right there, and that could be an issue for any of the voters who might feel like they are being swayed one way or another. Now, the election judge that I spoke to earlier says that they really didn't have much for an issue as far as the technical issues that happened earlier. That stuff took place, yes, but they got a chance to actually fix much of that before it caused too many issues for the voters who were here at that time early at 7 a.m. He says they got to it quick, and then on top of that, they did have some volunteers who were here earlier, and some of them may have been inexperienced, didn't quite know what to do with the long lines that were showing up, but they did happen to figure all of that out. He says he was surprised actually because of the ruling that came down saying they had to stay much later, but it's extra work. They plan on doing as much as they need to get these votes straightened out. Len, Mia, back to you.
All right, Levi, thank you so much. Of course, we are watching democracy in action here. Not always smooth, not always a safe ride, but it looks like they are trying to make amends. People forced to vote anywhere from 10 minutes later than they wanted to at 9 locations in Harris County to up to an hour and 15 minutes later. So therefore, that's why the lawsuit was filed. They extend the voting time until 8 o'clock tonight. And as you mentioned, early voting results will not be coming in until after 8 o'clock.
Yeah, a fair and reasonable thing that they did, considering it, infringing upon the right for people to be able to vote.
And given how heated this election has been, everybody wants to make sure there is access.
Exactly.
Okay, we got enough going on.
Yes.
The last thing we don't want to worry about access to voting, so everybody should get an opportunity. All right, it is the race that we've been talking about in Houston, and in fact, the rest of the country has taken notice. These two gentlemen were on 60 Minutes last Sunday. I'm talking about Congressman Beto O'Rourke and Senator Ted Cruz. Our Jason Miles is in the Galleria area at the Cruz campaign tonight, and I know they're very positive there. Jason?
Yeah, I can tell you the ballroom here at the Post Oak Hilton just got a lot more lively. At 7 o'clock, they allowed supporters in the door. They were lined up outside the ballroom for quite a while, and take a look behind me, quite a crowd. A couple of hundred people at least so far holding Ted Cruz signs, other signs, some of them saying cruising to victory. I can't tell you how many times we've heard that kind of phrase in one form or another during this campaign. As for the senator himself, I'm told he spent the day at home, I do believe, making phone calls. At some point, we believe he will end up here at the Hilton, perhaps watching returns from one of the rooms here, and then will make his way down at some point and take to that podium you see behind me in front of that big Texas flag. That's the second flag they put up tonight. The first one quite wrinkled. They tried to get a steamer out and get the wrinkles out. They finally replaced the flag, but looking pretty good here tonight. Quite a backdrop for what Senator Cruz hopes will be a victory speech later on. They did give us a loose itinerary a little earlier, kind of a timeline of the expected events here tonight. They didn't want us to go into too great detail on the air, but quite a few names on that list, I will tell you that. It was scheduled to kind of get underway, the program here at 7:30 or so, but since the last polls won't be closing here in Harris County until at least 8 Central Time, things could be slid back a little bit here as far as the schedule of events, but I can tell you a couple of bars are set up here in the ballroom. There's food in the back, a big screen TV. Results are showing on a couple of other monitors, so certainly a lot to entertain the crowd here as we await the final results in this very highly contested race. Guys?
All right, it is the race to watch. Jason Miles there with the Cruz camp. Let's check in now with Marcelino Benito. He is live in El Paso with Congressman Beto O'Rourke's campaign. Marcelino, what's it like there?
Mia, the polls are still open here in El Paso, so there is actively voting going on right now. And we know the campaign is still working to get as many of those voters to the actual polls. Once the polls close at 7 Mountain Time here in El Paso, the party will begin here. We're at a AAA ballpark, home typically of the El Paso Chihuahuas. Tonight, it'll be home for Beto O'Rourke's election night party. They expect several thousand people here. And the O'Rourke campaign tells me it is optimistic about what will happen tonight. He told me yesterday that he is putting his faith in the people of Texas. Now, we have been on the ground here in El Paso for about 36 hours, and we've seen that fervor, that energy that O'Rourke is able to bring into voters, into this campaign. He's energized a whole lot of new voters. They are counting on those new voters to be able to turn out and support him. I asked him yesterday, what is it going to take for you to pull this off and defeat Ted Cruz in a conservative state like Texas? He told me very simply he's going to need a massive turnout, that same level of turnout that they got during early voting. That's what he wanted to see today during Election Day. At this point, anecdotally, I can tell you we traveled around El Paso, several polling sites today. We didn't necessarily see that impressive turnout that perhaps the campaign was looking for, the campaign not commenting specifically on whether they were pleased with that turnout yet. I think it is telling that they are still out there. The candidate himself is still visiting polling places, trying to get as many voters to the polls as possible. The question all along in this campaign would be whether O'Rourke would be able to turn that fervor, that energy, that excitement into actual votes, more votes than Ted Cruz is going to get in most of those rural areas. That is a question that we'll have answers to soon once those numbers come in, and something we'll be watching very closely. Guys, back to you.
All right, that's Marcelino Benito. He's out in El Paso with Congressman Beto O'Rourke's campaign. That is going to be one of the hot spots that everybody will be watching tonight. Thank you, Marcelino. Joining us now here in studio, a couple of guests. Let me introduce the first one. Next to me, Doug Markham serves as Vice Chair of United Republicans of Harris County, longtime Republican precinct chair in the Heights. Love the Heights, great neighborhood. Doug, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
And also joining us this evening, Wayne Ashley, progressive political blogger. Thank you so much for being here. Gentlemen, interested to know, we just heard from both of our reporters at the Cruz and O'Rourke campaigns, your take on how this night is going to end in this highly contested race. Wayne?
Well, I think it's a very interesting race. I think much as we know as Southeast Texans, the conditions are right for some very interesting surprises tonight. We can tell when if it's humid outside when it's going to rain, and I think that there's quite possibly a blue wave coming for Texas.
And you say that based on what? Turnout, attitudes, what?
Absolutely historical turnout for a midterm election. First-time voters are up, younger voters are up in every sense of a measure. We even have Facebook groups trending topics like Republicans for Beto. I think it's a really, really good night and some great potential.
And Wayne, I want to let me bounce that off with Doug. So they've talked about nationally and in Texas a potential blue wave. You could flip that and say, hey, there could be a red wave as well. You know, there could be, you know what I'm saying? So what are your thoughts about what he's saying?
I think there'll be a blue wave, but I don't believe it'll be as strong as most of the analysts are anticipating. I think most people expect that Cruz will win. It may be a smaller margin than Republicans have won in past elections. Every statewide Republican will win. Attorney General Paxton may have a more narrow margin than some of the others, but I think at the end of the day, most of the Republican incumbents will hold on.
And is it because the numbers, as Ted Cruz has said, there are just too many conservatives in this state, and they just outnumber the Democrats.
I think that's a part of it. I think part of it is that the economy is fairly strong. We have very low unemployment at the moment. I think there's a decent chance that, given the general politics of our community, that Republican candidates will hold on. I'm a little worried in Harris County. It's early yet. We don't have the early vote results, but our countywide Judge Emmett could be in a tight race, and there may be some other state representatives and others that face some tight races.
Interesting you mentioned Ed Emmett, because he's being challenged by a relative unknown candidate until this election, and there has been talk and speculation that this could come to a race that comes down to the wire as well. How is that? A relative unknown, Ed Emmett, very well known, generally liked by several voters. How's this the case?
Well, Ed Emmett even had the endorsement of Garnet Coleman, who's a very well-known and respected state representative representing 3rd Ward and other communities.
And a Democrat, yeah.
And a longtime Democrat. I think what you're seeing is politics is a team sport in November elections, and people vote for their team. And you're seeing a lot of straight ticket voting on both sides, and we have to hope as Republicans that the independent voters break our way for candidates of quality like Ed Emmett.
Yeah. Wayne, let's talk about the difference in these campaigns and how they've gone about getting out, their platform, their word, their message. Beto O'Rourke, very involved, obviously, on social media, that type of thing, grassroots. We could say that Cruz has been a little bit more traditional. How do you think that's played in their advantage or disadvantage?
Well, I think it's been an incredible experiment for Beto O'Rourke, because for so long Democrats have been caught in something of a chicken versus egg scenario, where we really needed strong candidates to encourage others to turn out, but you can't get people to turn out without strong candidates. And so Beto O'Rourke has stepped in and has created some conditions for that logjam to break. By visiting all 254 of Texas's counties, he has left no stone unturned and come to every single community. It's an historic feat in itself, win or lose. And I think that that's going to play well for him as he recruits people that are not traditionally part of the party system.
It also is one of the most expensive Senate races as well, and maybe perhaps that's it. He's been able to match Cruz on campaign funds and what he has available to tap into.
Absolutely. I think that's part of the enthusiasm that you see, because he's raised all of that money from small dollar donors. More than 50% of it has come from Texans themselves. And so everybody is excited, and everybody can sense that this is a good campaign and has been an honest campaign that has run the right way.
I wonder, Doug, if you call this midterm a team sport, has the president done the Republicans a big favor, not just in Texas, but around the country, by campaigning like he has?
It depends on which Republicans. If you're a statewide Republican in North Dakota, in Missouri, certainly President Bush probably is revving up the base in your support. If you're, on the other hand, a suburban congressman like John Culberson, or like Brad in Richmond, or some of the others, it's not clear to me that the president necessarily is as helpful in those races. Is
this in some cases, maybe it's the race, that it is a referendum on the president more so than it is the candidates running?
I certainly recognize that the president has interjected himself in a big way into this campaign season, and I think we have to look at the results in part as a referendum on his quality of leadership, not necessarily the results in the economy, but his demeanor and other aspects of the way he governs.
Okay, so let's look at one particular race for Congress. You've got Lizzie Fletcher running against John Culberson. It's in District 7, I believe it is, in the Houston area. It looks like, on paper, a toss-up. What are your thoughts?
Well, as a matter of disclosure, I'm a donor to John Culberson, and I've known him for 20 years.
All right.
I anticipate he's going to win tonight. I think it's going to be a very narrow result. We may be waiting until 2 in the morning to see the results come in from the final boxes, and we may need to wait for some mail ballots for the next several days to be counted.
All right, and speaking of ballots and counting results and doing the tally, we're getting some early results already. First up race we want to talk about, obviously the big one, Beto versus Cruz, or Cruz versus O'Rourke. Now, folks, this is just with 1% of precincts reporting. Very, very early results here. And these are not from local returns, but 55% for O'Rourke as opposed to 45% for Cruz, with just 1% of precincts reporting.
Yeah, we have done this so many times before, gentlemen. As you know, as the night wears on, the numbers will change accordingly. 1% tells us nothing. It is just early, so we'll see how this plays out. All right, let's go to Adam Bennett. He's at the Harris County election headquarters. What are you hearing there, Adam? I know we've had some changes. Some of the polling places, 9 of them in fact, have stayed open later.
Yeah, so Lynn, what's going on right now is we are in the county clerk's office, and just a few minutes ago, poll watchers from both of the major political parties went into this room behind me where they are counting the early voting ballots and the mail-in ballots that have been sent in. They are tabulating them as we speak. Now, it is after 7. Most polling places at this point are closed. Anybody who is not in line would not be able to vote after 7. However, this has been quite an unusual year here in Harris County. As we talked about earlier, several polling places, 9 polling places in Harris County, are actually staying open until 8 because of a legal challenge, because of some issues that voters were having there earlier in the day. So those 9 polling places, they will be open until 8. So instead of actually releasing the early voting results at 7 when the polls typically close, Harris County is actually waiting until 8 o'clock tonight to start releasing those results. So Harris County will be doing that. So will El Paso County, for a different reason though. It's because it's actually an hour behind in the Mountain Time Zone. So that's significant because that is a lot of votes that we were talking about. Just in Harris County alone, for example, we had more people voting early this midterm election than we did in the entire midterm in 2014. More than 855,000 people in Harris County voted early in person and also had sent in those mail-in ballots. So obviously that could have a big impact on a number of the statewide races, and of course we have a lot of highly contested local races here as well. Turnout also on election day today expected to be big. As of actually 3:30 this afternoon, we had heard from staff here in the county clerk's office that already 209,000 people had voted here today across the county, just today alone, and they were expecting tens of thousands more, maybe as many as 275,000, maybe even more than that. So in all, they're looking at maybe 1.1 million votes coming from Harris County in this total midterm election. Obviously, that has the ability to drastically change a lot of these races depending on how it all shakes out. So we're getting those results a little bit later than we normally are, but that process has started right now. They are counting the votes in the room behind me from early voting and mail-in ballots as well, and they'll start releasing those at 8 o'clock tonight. And again, there are a number of poll watchers here that are in that room from both political parties, both major political parties, keeping an eye on things and making sure that this process runs as smoothly as possible. Guys, back to you.
All right, Adam, thanks so much. A lot of the statewide races we're going to start getting early numbers on, but here in Harris County, it's going to be a little bit longer before we start getting a sneak peek at how these races are shaping up.
And that's okay, because we want everyone to have the opportunity to vote. Exactly. We know so many of you have been vocal online, right? Whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Instagram. And Jason Bristol joins us now with a look at what some of you are saying tonight. Jason?
That's right. You know, this is such a remarkable day in America where we can do something so simple and yet so complex, and that is to vote. And earlier this morning on H-Town Rush, we asked this question: no matter your politics, voting is part of our rights as Americans. We want to hear from you. In 5 words or less, tell us what else you love about living in the United States. So let's go through some of our responses that we received. Yesenia says, the right to vote and protest. 5 words there. Next up, Alan says, love the freedom and diversity. And one more we can share with you. Cosette says, the ability to change leaders. Now, we all have heard amazing voting stories, perhaps someone in their 90s voting for the first time, or someone voting for the first time as an 18-year-old. But this is really one of the cool stories that we'll see. How about Voting while you float. Did you know astronauts can vote from space station? This is from the Twitter feed from NASA astronauts. How do you cast a ballot when you're floating over 200 miles above your polling place? Thanks to a special electronic absentee ballot, astronauts are able to vote from space. That is pretty cool. So if they are able to do it way up there, there is no reason why we can't do it down here. Len, Mia?
All right, thank you, sir. I agree with that. Pretty cool to be able to vote from space, isn't it?
Really cool.
Here's that Senate race that everybody is keeping an eye on. Awfully early, folks, here, with just 1% of the precincts reporting. Congressman Beto O'Rourke, 53%. Ted Cruz at 46%. This is a race that is going to be close throughout the night. Polling throughout the campaign has had O'Rourke down anywhere from 5 to 10 points. So we'll see how it plays out the rest of the night.
Yes, you know, both of these campaigns talked about it's all about voter turnout, right?
Sure.
You know, you have to show up, their voters have to show up to the poll. So we really don't know until we get the final results in, Bob.
Well, you know, you got a record vote. We don't know what's going to come out on election day.
Yeah.
And here in Harris County, we have to wait till at least 8 o'clock.
The question is, who are the voters?
Well,
who are the voters?
Who are all those people we've seen wrapping lines around buildings, Bob?
They're people who haven't voted before in a midterm election in their entire lives. Many of them are, as I said before, young people. But you're still turning out people who just don't consider a midterm election as something important. Question is why, and how did it affect their vote?
Yeah.
We'll find out, but I'll tell you, Tarrant County just came in with the early vote.
Yeah.
Tarrant County is a traditional Republican area, though it's trending a little bit more Democratic. Beto O'Rourke trailed Ted Cruz by less than 1,000 votes out of almost 500,000 votes cast in Tarrant County early. It just, that seems so odd. I don't know if it'll hold up. Maybe Tarrant County will turn out 50% more votes. But my guess is you got to, like someone like Ted Cruz has got to wonder, where am I going to get my votes? There are these smaller communities, but he never went to them. Beto did. It'll be interesting, but I think we're in for a race. If Ted Cruz wins this race, it's surely not going to be much above 5 points.
Yeah, it's going to be a close one, that's for certain. And speaking of Tarrant County, that is such an important county in the race itself. Is that a make or break for either Beto or for Cruz?
I think it's for Cruz. I think, you know, you need, Dallas County came in, as we'd expected, Democratic. What I didn't expect was both the size of the vote, which again was at presidential levels, 85% of presidential levels, and it went 65-35 for the early vote. So Ted Cruz is losing to Beto in Dallas County. Dallas County has been Democratic for a long time, 2-1. It's not the rate, it's the number of votes that were cast. You start running votes up in Dallas, if you can't match that in a place like Tarrant, which is much smaller than Dallas County, where are you going to get your votes? Here in Harris, Travis? I can't believe that Ted Cruz would lose this race, but again, we're looking at numbers here now that, you know, would suggest, as the polls, and maybe the good news is for the pollsters, they're close to being right.
Yeah, I got you. All right, thank you, sir. Now let's take a look at some of the races going on right now. The early numbers coming in. Watch.
Okay, Britt, so...
And good evening once again, everybody. A live look from one of the 9 polling places right here in the Houston area. Still open tonight. This is past the original 7 p.m. closing time. That's because of an emergency court order that came out this afternoon.
Let's go ahead and map it out for you. Normally, we'd be giving you the earliest results right now, but returns have been delayed until these 9 polling spots close at 8 p.m. These polls opened late this morning, and a voting rights group successfully sued to give people 1 more hour to vote. Let's get to a live picture from our field crew at the Fiesta just inside the South Loop. We have several teams monitoring the polls for any problems.
Yeah, one of the most anticipated results tonight, as we've been saying, Republican Ted Cruz trying to win re-election in a tough, unexpectedly close race against Congressman Beto O'Rourke.
Our Jason Miles is live at Cruz's headquarters at the Hilton Post Oak. Jason?
Yeah, no matter how the night ends, the party has begun here at the Hilton Post Oak. Several hundred supporters who were lined up outside this ballroom were allowed in around 7 o'clock. Many of them brought their signs with them, some of them saying "Cruise to Victory," and they are watching the returns on several big monitors set up here in the ballroom. Senator Cruz himself had no public appearances today, no scheduled events. I'm told he's been working the phones, presumably from home. We will continue to keep track of things as the night progresses, guys.
Proler. Is it?
And now to the underdog working toward an upset, Congressman Beto O'Rourke. Marcelino Benito is in his hometown of El Paso. Marcelino?
Guys, folks with the O'Rourke campaign, I can tell you, are feeling pretty good with these early numbers. They admit it's early, but it's what they like. To see. If they can stay within 5 points, they think they got a race on their hands. Back to you.
Thank you, sir. We'll stay on top of all these races with results as soon as they are released. You'll see them scrolling at the bottom of your screen. We'll be back at 7:55 with an update. Until then, our newscast continues right here online on our Facebook, our YouTube channel, and KHOU.com.
Let's continue now with our special midterm election night coverage. We're joined by some more guests this evening. Joining me and Len both is Antonio Arellano, a young liberal. Thank you so much for being here tonight to discuss everything elections and what is truly a historic election night.
And sitting next to me, Ben Proler, National Board Member of the Maverick PAC. So, Ben, your thoughts about what you're looking at tonight. What interests you and why?
Yeah, I think, Len, it's been an incredible night already. We've seen early turnout was fantastic. Turnout today was fantastic. And the best thing about it was, Antonio and I were talking, young people are out there. And for us both, that's inspiring. There's a lot of candidates that are out there across the country. Maverick PAC has supported many of them that are young, aspiring conservatives. And here in Harris County, we have Dan Crenshaw, which is a fantastic candidate. Hopeful that he wins, and we're pretty confident he will.
So I wonder, Bob Stein was saying many people turning out for midterm for the very first time. Is that true for you guys, and if so, why?
Not true for me, a longtime voter, but certainly we're seeing new faces out there.
And why do you think that is?
I think
young people.
Yeah, I think there's just a motivation for young people to get into the arena. I think there are topics that really aspire our generation to want to vote.
Like what kind of topics?
I mean, everything from immigration to the economy to foreign security, national defense. So it really ranges the spectrum. But I think really it's the young candidates that are out there that are running for office. They are the leaders that aspire and inspire young people to want to get out and vote.
Antonio, who is speaking to you as a candidate and why?
You know, I think that it's imperative to realize that Latinos, young Latinos in Texas, are mobilizing like never before. Whether that be because of Beto O'Rourke's campaign that has reached out more significantly than any other candidate, really making a direct approach to making sure that he engages on the issues that they're affected with. Our recent study released said that young Latinos identify with 3 key issues: healthcare for all, immigration, comprehensive immigration reform, and racial equality. Those issues are the issues that are affecting the young Latinos in the United States. And Beto O'Rourke has capitalized on that. They're mobilizing like never before. We have seen a historic early voter turnout from the Latino community, and we hope to make history again tonight.
And how are they mobilizing? Are we talking about mostly, social media? Is that how these candidates are speaking to young Latino voters?
You know, I think from my perspective as the communications director of JOLT, we have been doing a lot of innovation in regards to reaching out to young Latinos. It's a new generation. We can't play politics as usual. We have to make sure that we're addressing their issues by really speaking to their core and infiltrating the culture here in Texas. By 2022, Latinos will be the majority of the population. We have always been told that we're the minority. Within 4 years, that will be the difference. And so it's about making that mental switch from a minority to a majority mindset and attracting all the political power that comes with it.
Antonio, even Beto O'Rourke has said consistently that Latino voters, as large as they are of the population, consistently underrepresent at the polls. Why do you think that has changed this time?
Because a couple of things. So the mixture of the toxic political climate that is a result of the Trump administration that has demonized and criminalized and attacked, discriminated against Latinos. Here in Texas, we have a fight for human rights at our border. We have children living in detention centers separated from their families. And our study at Jolt's initiative recently realized that 62% of Latinos living in Texas are either immigrants themselves or children of immigrants. So attacks on the immigrant population is a direct attack on the entire Latino population, and we understand that. So we're mobilizing not just for ourselves, but for our families.
Let me ask you, gentlemen, in talking about the young adult vote, we've seen a lot of celebrities step up to the plate with these endorsements. Curious to know, does this make a difference for younger voters? Is that who they're talking to? Does it make a difference to you?
I think it's a great question. I've thought a lot about it. I don't think so. I think, again, it's the candidates themselves. They are the ones that drive young people out. I will commend Beto O'Rourke. He got young people out in new ways, engaged them in different types of arenas, whether it was running with them at Memorial Park or talking to them on Facebook. Dan Crenshaw did the exact same thing here in a different context, a different race. So I don't think celebrities have that impact on races, to be honest. I really do believe it's the candidates themselves.
I have to say it is encouraging to have you both here speaking so passionately about getting out to vote. You both look like you're about 12. I'm sorry.
I was curious to know their age. I know you're not supposed to ask, but I mean, you gentlemen obviously know the issues. You're conversing and speaking with others who are your same age who know the issues as well. How old are you?
I'm 28, so I'm not that young.
Yeah, I'm right around your age. I'm 27.
There you
go.
Wow.
Young adults, we said, not 12.
I will say this.
Sorry.
It's
Feels
our
like
older
12
friends.
to me.
It's the older generation too, that if you give people the chance to step into the arena and do things, speak on these panels, talk to leaders, it really can set us up for success.
But what we have to acknowledge more than anything is that millennial voters make the largest eligible voting bloc for the first time in history this election cycle. We're beating baby boomers like never before, and it's our future that's at stake. So we're mobilizing like never before to defend and fight for our future.
Thank you both for weighing in.
Yes,
Antonio,
thank
Ben,
you.
we appreciate your time. Let's check out the race. We're going to take now a look at early voting results. This is for governor, and you can see already the numbers have started to flip. The incumbent, Greg Abbott, 53% against Lupe Valdez, who is at 45%. Still only 1% of the precincts reporting there.
All right, and now we want to check in with the race for lieutenant governor. Incumbent Dan Patrick against Democratic challenger Mike Collier. Our Lauren Tallarico is covering this race for us and joins us live now. Good evening, Lauren.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, we're at the watch party for Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. This kicks off at 8 o'clock tonight. People are starting to trickle in right now, and we can see some of the results rolling in behind us. But again, this whole thing doesn't get started until 8 o'clock tonight. But this has been an interesting race for Lieutenant Governors. Dan Patrick, he really hasn't done that much campaigning, but he has done plenty of stumping for Senator Ted Cruz. In fact, he has been out on the road with him a few different times. And last night he was at the Redneck Country Club for Cruz's final rally that we were at. Of course, they do share a similar platform. Patrick is a conservative Republican for the border wall, the Second Amendment, arming teachers, and getting rid of Obamacare, just to name a few of his policies. His opponent, Democrat Mike Collier, is from Kingwood, so he's a local guy. He is a moderate Democrat. In fact, he used to be a registered Republican. He, again, from Kingwood. He did ask Patrick for a debate, but Patrick refused that debate. And they told the Texas Tribune that there isn't anyone in the Lone Star State who isn't absolutely clear about where Dan Patrick stands on the issues, and that's why they chose not to debate. Meanwhile, I'll go ahead and let Collier tell you a little bit about his platform.
Well, I've tried to make this campaign not Democrat versus Republican, but public education. But property taxes are too high, school funding is too low, and as an accountant, I know how to solve that problem. I believe that we should expand Medicaid. That's a good deal. We should have done that. 33 other states have already done that. We need sensible gun laws, background check systems that work, red flag laws. Those are the things that I intend to do as Lieutenant Governor.
Mike Collier is considered a long shot in this race. He is going to be watching tonight from Austin. Meanwhile, again, this watch party for Dan Patrick kicks off at 8 o'clock tonight, and we're going to be here throughout the evening, both on air and online, bringing you those race details. Len, Mia.
All right, Lauren, thank you so much for the update from the Lieutenant Governor's race. The incumbent Dan Patrick trying to hold on to that seat.
Yeah. Let's check in now with our Stephanie Whitfield. She is covering Dan Crenshaw versus Litton. Stephanie.
Hey guys, sorry, yeah, the party just got started here, doors open, everything's kind of on standby at this point. This huge crowd behind me waiting for, well, everybody's crowded around the TV, not exactly sure what they're watching right now. Dan Crenshaw hasn't made it here yet. As I was mentioning, everything's kind of on hold right now, like it is in much of Harris County. Everyone waiting for all the polls to close so that election results can start coming in. Now, Crenshaw hopes this will be a victory party later tonight. He's hoping to replace Ted Poe, who's held the seat in Congressional District 2 for the last 14 years. And he is a Republican. Crenshaw is the Republican candidate, so Crenshaw is the favorite in this race. But who he's facing is Todd Litton. Litton is coming from the world of nonprofits, and his focuses during this campaign have been healthcare and education. But what these two candidates are on the same page about is the importance of flood control here in Harris County. They're also both newcomers to politics. So tonight, we're going to find out who the voters in District 2 want to be representing them moving forward. Guys?
Should be very interesting, Stephanie. Thank you. That is an open seat. Ted Poe retiring there in Congressional District 2. And now State Rep Kevin Roberts trying to get in against Houstonian and a military veteran Dan Crenshaw. Thank you so much. Let's check the governor's race again. And once again, we're talking about only 1% of the precincts reporting if you look at the bottom. But the governor way ahead, and this is not unexpected. He has been a relatively popular governor in a predominantly red state. He has stuck to the themes that Republicans want to hear during his campaign. He has talked about overcoming his injury. You know, he's in a wheelchair. Right. He had a tree fall on him. Those are things that resonate with people. And you can see here the numbers. He is 10 points ahead. I would be surprised if that changes much over the night, but we'll see.
We'll have to wait and see. And you mentioned that it is very early. So early, in fact, that we're not including Harris County numbers just yet because we have these 9 polling locations where the time was extended by an hour. Our Adam Bennett is live at election headquarters tonight. Adam, you've been following all of this, eager to hear more about the returns coming in there.
That's right. So as you mentioned, normally the polls would be closed by now, but because this has been an unusual election day, 9 of those polls in Harris County are still open. More on that in a second. But I just talked to a staffer here with the Harris County Clerk's office, and he told me that they have an updated unofficial estimate of how many people have voted in Harris County today as of 7 o'clock. So keep in mind, again, polls are still open for another 20 minutes, at least until they officially close, 22 minutes, and then anybody in line at that point can still vote. He told me that as of 7 o'clock tonight, just over 345,000 people, 345,000 voters. It's an unofficial estimate, but they are estimated to have cast their ballot today in Harris County. He says they got a late surge. You may remember when we checked in about 3:30 this afternoon, that number was 209,000, give or take. And they said they had a late surge late in the afternoon and early evening of voters. And again, those polls are still open. He says with that late surge, that actually pushed this year's total number of voters in Harris County past the 2012 presidential election. So in that election, 1.204 million voters cast their ballot. This election, it's even higher than that. Just gives you an idea of how historic this turnout has been. We already surpassed the 2014 midterm totals just during early voting alone with the 855,000 plus people that voted early then. So this is a big, big turnout here in Harris County. Down the hall from me, we have poll watchers from both parties that are watching as the early voting returns and the mail-in ballot returns are being tabulated right now. Obviously, we cannot bring our camera in there. Those results have not been released at this point. And again, those won't be released until 8 o'clock tonight. All of the early voting totals, the mail-in totals, and the other results, those will start being released at 8 because 9 polling sites are still being kept open around Harris County until 8 o'clock tonight because of that legal action that was taken by a couple of different groups against the county because of some voting issues that happened earlier in the day. El Paso County also will not release their results until 8 o'clock tonight for a different reason. They are an hour behind us in their time zone. But there are a lot of votes up for grabs at this point. 1.2 million votes cast more or less in Harris County up to this point, according to those unofficial estimates. And that could have obviously a big impact on a lot of the different state races that are in play. So behind me, down the hall, those votes will continue to be tabulated as the night goes on. And as we get newer numbers, we'll continue to bring them to you as well. Send it back to you.
All right, Adam Bennett at election headquarters. Going to be a busy and bustling night there. Thank you so much. We'll check back in with you a little bit later. For right now, we want to get back to our wonderful guests. Right now, we have Antonio and Ben. Thank you so much for joining us. Interested to hear from you guys and doing research and looking at what different analysts say. They say that it's social issues that's driving young voters to the polls. Is it more so issues or the candidates themselves?
I'll go back and say again, the candidates themselves. Again, there's so many issues that are at stake in this election. Certainly with the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, that caused a lot of emotion. A lot more voters, I think, came out after the end result of that of those hearings. But I still go back to it's the candidates that engage with young voters, that engage with any type of voter, and the way in which they engage. That's what drives people to the polls, and that's what gets new voters out.
Talking from a Latino perspective, we've realized that young Latinos are incredibly progressive, and the issues are what are driving them to the polls. They want to legalize marijuana, they want gun control, they want to increase the minimum wage. These are issues that are mobilizing Latinos because they realize that they don't have to follow what the politician is guiding them to do. They can pitch what legislation they want to see addressed, and they have got to start listening to us if they want to be elected.
So I wanted to talk to you, Ben. I know you're self-described conservative. There are themes that Texas conservatives have stuck to and they have really driven home in the political ads. I think of Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick sitting on a porch saying the liberals want to take our guns and they want open borders. Does that resonate with you?
Yes. I mean, I think those issues drive a lot of people to the polls. And more than anything, they are fundamentally important to the message of a conservative. But I do think that the conservative message can't get kind of soundbited into a few lines. There are so much more that we offer, so many innovative things that we're trying to do at the state level, federal level, and certainly here locally, those that may not be Republicans, but they have conservative views. So I mean, I think it's hard to take the label of an advertisement on television and use that as a synopsis
in
for
30
the entire,
seconds, right?
the entire party.
But that's what candidates try and do in these ads, is they try and break it down to a couple of themes that resonate with people.
I think they try more than anything to paint a difference amongst themselves and their opponent. And typically they have to do it in 30 seconds and they have to make it emotionally stimulating. You guys are in media. I mean, you have to be able to drive attention to your advertisements. So I can't speak on behalf of one candidate or one advertisement, but all I will say is the conservative message offers a lot more and certainly I think is moving in the direction to offer much to our state, much to our city, and certainly much to the country.
Yeah, Ben, I heard you mention the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, you know, and different motivations for getting to the poll. And when I hear Brett Kavanaugh hearings, I often think of female voters. And I know, Antonio, you've done a lot of research about female Latina voters.
Yeah, so our study, We Are Texas, which was recently released at the Texas Capitol by Jolt Initiative, did a comprehensive in-depth study for 9 months. And we realized that female voters in Texas are leading the way, and they're voting and being civically engaged at 25% higher than their male Latino counterparts and higher than their non-Latina female counterparts. The future of Texas is female, and she's a Latina.
So, Antonio, I have a question. So, Senator Ted Cruz, I heard him say in an interview that the national media would have you believe that Latinos are all liberal. That clearly is not the case. What do you say to that?
Latinos are increasingly progressive, though. We have to identify the issues that I just talked about are increasingly progressive. There might be a generational gap between older Latinos that are more religious and perhaps don't identify with some of the issues like LGBTQ rights, etc. But the youth, the Latino youth, are realizing that the future is progressive, and that's what we're mobilizing
I think that's interesting. So you're talking about, you know, young voters who are more liberal. Let's talk about young voters who are more conservative. Do you think there's a gap there as well, Ben, between young conservatives and older conservatives?
I do. I've been fighting for this for a long time. It's not easy. I mean, I think the Republican Party has had a messaging problem for a long time, certainly to younger voters. And I think we've had two questions about what drives young people, and I just keep going back to it's the candidates. And I don't know if we'll be able to kind of drive the right message. And it goes back to your last question about the sound bites and what does the conservative message really stand for until you drive younger members of our party to run for office. What I'm really proud of in this election, what we're seeing tonight, is a lot of young people that where they are running and they're winning. And they're female, they're male, they're Latino, they're Latina. They come from all different parts of the country. So I ultimately think we're in a good position, and I believe we'll start to see the message resonate with more people.
Yeah, I heard you mention Dan Crenshaw a couple of times, that he really speaks to you as a young conservative. What is it about him that speaks to you versus other Republican candidates that are out there?
I think Dan, and I've known him now since he started running, he's pragmatic. I think he's willing to work with the other side. I think he has a list of what he wants to accomplish. But more than anything, his service record to our country, what he's done, he's worn the uniform. I mean, he's a proud American, and I'm proud to know him. And so I think he's going to serve us well, and I'm excited to see what he can do.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much again for your insight. You've been fantastic. Let's go to the boards. This is the race for lieutenant governor in the state of Texas. This may be a little closer than what some people would expect, but again, it is early. The incumbent, Dan Patrick, the Republican, who we talked about his commercial that we've seen a lot, against Mike Collier, just 4 percentage points separating them at this time.
You know what, this gives people plenty of material to talk about on social media. We know that you guys are going to be tweeting away, posting on Facebook away as these results come in. Let's get over to Jason Bristol now, who is watching all things social. Hey, Jason.
Hey, thank you so much, Mia. One thing that we've been asking and basically getting this message across to everyone out there during the news is, if you have questions about voting, if you have questions about your polling place, let us know. In fact, a few moments ago, we got this question on Facebook from Susan, one of our viewers. She says, since there are still polls open in Houston, I didn't think the current counts were supposed to be made public now. And we got thinking, that's a very interesting point. So we called both the Texas Secretary of State's office, the Harris County Attorney's office, confirming what the Secretary of State office telling us, that Harris County, as Adam Bennett alluded to, we will not know any voting results from Harris County until after 8 p.m. And that, again, is because of those 9 polling locations, which are closing now an hour later, that Adam Bennett referred to earlier. So again, the numbers that you see on your screen, those are from other parts of the state. Those are not from Harris County. We won't know anything from Harris County until after 8 o'clock. So again, keep those questions coming into us. We'll do our very best to answer them for you. And of course, we'll be tracking all of the activity on social media. Len, Mia?
Thank you, Jason. Let's check the governor's race right now. It's about the same as when we checked not too long ago. The incumbent, Greg Abbott, with a nice large lead in the early voting against Lupe Valdez.
You know, it's so early, I almost want to say it's premature. You know what I mean? With just 1% of the precincts reporting. But coming up at 8 o'clock, they'll start coming in much quicker, because by that time we'll have all of our polling locations
in Harris County.
Yes,
it'll be a quick touch of the finger. Remember, all the early votes are counted. They just have to release them. So
your early impressions, I know it's early, but you know, just for the sake of a horse race.
I am really surprised at how close the race is, not just between Cruz and O'Rourke, which I'd expected, but it's also, I think, cascading over to the other candidates.
Like Dan Patrick.
Dan Patrick and Collier, Paxton, Sid Miller. I think what you're seeing, and it's something that the Republicans knew a couple of years ago, that Republicans like to split their ticket. And when you have a candidate like Attorney General Paxton, who's had some problems being under indictment and going to trial, when Sid Miller makes what I will call, you know, inappropriate remarks, I'm a little surprised about Dan Patrick and the governor. They were running in the polls 16 points up. And I think this is a case of where voters are probably doing something very different than what they're telling their pollsters.
But you said something so telling. You said in early polling, or in polling rather, it was different. And we learned from the 2016 election that just because things are one way in polling, right?
Well, what's interesting is the polling is asymmetric. It's as if Republicans were not willing to tell pollsters, or at least not willing to say, I'm going to vote for Abbott, but I'm not voting for Cruz. Now, it's much too early. I mean, but I'll give you one example I mentioned in the last segment. Tarrant County, which is, of course, a Republican county, not overwhelmingly, next to Dallas, it went dead even between Cruz and O'Rourke. So my suspicion, but yet, for the governor, he was winning 55-45. So I think what you're beginning to see is some evidence that though people want to stay with the governor, lieutenant governor, the attorney general, Paxton, they may not have liked Ted Cruz.
Do you think, let's speak nationally now, the Democrats need 23 seats to win the House? Will they get it?
Yeah, I think they're at probably 16 as we entered the newsroom this evening.
Oh, really? Is it 16 already?
They picked up another seat in Miami. I think they'll get that number. Whether they'll get much over that number, I think the betting was something around 32, 33. My personal number was 37, but I think they will take the House. I don't think they'll take the House by what I will call the landslide of 50 seats.
Got it.
The Senate, I think we already just saw tonight that Braun beat Donnelly in Indiana. That is not an absolute fix, but he's running 5 to 6 points up. I think Nelson may lose in Florida. He was trailing.
But the Republicans are expected to hold on to the Senate.
I think they're going to pick up at least between 1 and 3, and let's call it 2 more seats. The Democrats might pick up some seats in the far west, like Arizona or Nevada, but unlikely to get both. So it's somewhere between 1 and 3, maybe closer to 2, maybe even as few as 1. But the Democrats may get, I think, I'd say almost at this point, it's a close certainty they'll get the House. How much, we don't know.
Right. So much at stake here. It really is high stakes tonight.
You know, the other thing that we don't pay a lot of attention to, I tell my students, there are other races on the ballot in the country, governors. And you say, well, governor, how important can it be if it's another state? Really important.
Why?
Governors, 2020 will be a redistricting year. Many say that one of the reasons the Republicans have such an advantage is they've been controlling the redistricting in like 36 of the 50 states. But if you elect Democratic governors in those same states where Republicans control one or both houses, those governors, particularly in states like Ohio, have veto power over the redistricting plan. That gives the Democrats some edge to compete. And it looks like tonight they're going to be picking up not a yeoman share, but 3 or 4 important ones, particularly in a state like Ohio. Looks like Corday was leading DeWine.
We were talking about Congress, and one of the fascinating races to watch here is the incumbent, John Culberson, against Lizzie Fletcher. I don't think, has Lizzie even run before?
No, she's never run for an office.
And so she's an attorney, a partner in a law firm?
Women on the ballot this year, more than ever.
It's historic, but more importantly, how can I put this in? I think that one we won't. You'll be asleep before we know that one. I think that'll go down to the overseas votes. I think the polling was accurate on that, within 1 or 2 points, and I think you're going to probably see a late night on that one, and maybe even a recount.
Let's talk about the female impact here, Bob. Both all the women that we're seeing on the ballot, and then voter turnout as far as women are concerned, and which women are showing up at the polls or have shown up.
Well, women have traditionally in our county outpolled men. This time that number is getting wider. Particularly women of color have outpolled their male counterparts in the African American community and the Hispanic community. But something else we hadn't seen in a long time, tremendous new registration among young women and young women of color. The other is we're seeing record numbers of women running, not just for the Congress or around the country, but something else we've not seen in a long time. Women of what I will call an unusual stripe. They're not coming in with long experiences in public service. Usually the best candidates are men and women who've run before, raised money, have a name. Fletcher might have been in politics, but she's never really been a candidate. And you can go through dozens of House candidates around the country, women, and they're not the women you would expect. Some with military records, some with extensive experience in business, some with kids who are much older than infants, and they're making very important strides. I think a good example of that is Donna Shalala, who's the other end of the generation, came in and a former college president and professor, and she looks like she's a pickup in Southern Florida.
You know, Republican or Democrat, it's great to see all of these women taking part in the process and seeking office. Bob Stein, thanks so much. You're going to stay with us. We're going to continue our special coverage. Let's go ahead and take another look at one of the big races of the night, now with 2% of precincts reporting. That was Cruz and O'Rourke, and now it's flipped over to the lieutenant governor's race. Wow, look at this, tied with just 2% of the precincts reporting.
All right, after 9 polling locations had to extend their hours until 8 o'clock tonight because of a lawsuit claiming they did not open on time this morning.
Well, those final 9 locations are closing in just a few minutes, including a Fiesta Mart on Kirby Drive.
And in parts of Harris County, a big race is on the ballot for the U.S. House District number 7.
Republican John Culberson versus Democrat Lizzie Fletcher. The KHOU 11 News crew is monitoring this matchup at the candidates' watch parties here in Houston. Let's start now with Larry Seward at the John Culberson campaign headquarters.
Yeah, Mia, this party is now crowded, people mingling, watching the screens. The representative told me earlier he feels good, he feels confident that voter turnout is on his side, that heavily Republican precincts saw record numbers of voters. He paralleled this to the presidential election. He believes numbers will top that, which obviously would be in his favor. This district has been Republican for now 50 years, going back to President George H.W. Bush. He believes voters respect his reputation and what he has done for this district, and know in his mind that voting for Lizzie Fletcher will turn all of that around. Let's now toss to Sherman Chow, who is with the Fletcher campaign.
Yeah, we are here at the Armadillo Palace, aptly named. A lot of Texana folks starting to trickle in here, though still a little bit early for an election night party. Swing over here, you can see the media is getting set up, and behind us is the stage where the candidate will be here, we think maybe in about an hour or so. Back to you all.
All right, our live coverage continues online right now. You can watch on KHOU.com or the KHOU mobile app.
Welcome back to our coverage of the midterm elections. We have a couple of young folks in the house with us again. We've got Hannah Kaplan next to me, a Rice University Young Democrats, along with Antonio Cruz, College Republicans at the University of Houston. Thank you both.
Yeah, you know what? The future is about young people. You guys are our future. So let's start off with, for you guys, as college students, is this your first midterm election to vote in, Antonio?
I believe so. You know, maybe there has been an election that I have voted in, but let's face it, there's so much coverage on this one and so much energy on this one, that's hard to think of anyone other than this one right here. So for the sakes of answering your question, I would say yes, it is.
Yes. And how about you, Hannah?
Yeah, this is also my first midterm election, and like Antonio said, it almost feels like a general election with how much energy and mobilization we have on campus and all around the country.
What is it about this election that energizes you, that brings you to the polls?
Well, I think what's interesting about this presidency is that we've had a president who's been campaigning since basically day one, and he said that his election, and you should pretend that his name is on the ballot, and so that's mobilized both his base and also the opposition, similar to a general election.
And so you are, so where are you on that spectrum there?
So I'm the president of the Rice University Young Democrats, so I would consider myself part of the opposition.
And so what is it about the president's message as he tries to rally folks to the polls that you don't like?
So I think that a lot of the messaging that he has is very divisive. I think a lot of students feel similar to that, at least on college campus. And, you know, we want a message of unity, a message that reaches out to everyone and not demagoguery or disunity.
Yeah. And Antonio, as a young Republican, what is motivating you in this race? Is it in fact the president, or is it the other candidates?
It is. President Trump does have a reason why I'm coming out here, but also because of the Cruz and Beto race. That's one of the reasons why I'm out here. You know, those two are very high profile. There's been so much activity there that, you know, it's kind of hard not to go out there and voice your opinion by voting whenever it's just such a high energy with these two people. So yes, I'm out here because, you know, I am a Republican, and honestly, I am a supporter of Donald Trump, and I'm also a supporter of Ted Cruz, as my shows.
Yeah. So, and what is it, as a young conservative, that these candidates are talking about it, what issues are they talking about that has energized you to go ahead and vote for them and support them?
Well, there's been so many key issues that you hear about all the time. You know, there's health care, there's immigration, gun control, all these issues that we care about a lot here in Texas, and also you hear that all over the nation, I assume. You know, when it comes to those issues, you know, there's just two completely opposite point of views when it comes to them. So, you know, it's very hard to be, okay, I'm somewhere over here when they're so brought out that you end up being on one side or the other.
I wonder what your thoughts are about the Republican stance on immigration. They talk about this caravan. They talk about, President frames them as invaders. Others, like Hannah, would say that's an exaggeration, that's fear-mongering. How do you feel? It is an exaggeration, I'm not going to lie. The thing about immigration is that the caravan that's coming along, this is not the first caravan that's been coming to the United States of America. Last time it happened, it would always trickle down as they come up to Mexico, and whenever they would get to the border, you know, we would process them because they are saying that they are here for asylum, and then for the most part we would turn them away because they do not, you know, meet our standards of what it is to be searching for asylum. So it has been an exaggeration, but at the same time, the immigration, the caravan issue is a topic of where do you stand on immigration overall. For a Republican, we believe, look, we are not going to shut out everyone, but we believe that we have a right to know who's coming into our country and if they are beneficial to our country. And do you believe in the wall? That's always been a tricky issue. I would say, if I have to say yes or no, I'm going to say yes. But why are you hesitated? Why? Yeah. Mainly because I'm, as you can tell, I'm Hispanic, and whenever everyone asks me about that question, there's always this thing of you look like them, but yet you want to build the wall. Yeah. So there's always a hesitation whenever I'm saying this. I'm saying the answer. Sure. But the reason why I'm supportive of the wall is because we do have an issue with immigration because America is much better economically than South America, and they will continue to come up here to search a better life. Now, there's nothing wrong with looking for a better life, but again, we would like to know who's coming into our nation. So there is that. We want to slow down the amount of people who just easily cross over, and also we want to slow down the flow of drugs that are coming in through the nation. We believe that a wall can help slow that down. Gotcha.
The polls now closed. It is 8:03. Want to mention that, and real quick, we want to take a look at some of the returns that we're getting here. This, of course, one of the hottest, if not the biggest race in the state of Texas. Beto O'Rourke here with 50% of the vote. Ted Cruz with 49%. Once again, that's just with 2% of the precincts reporting. Yeah, dead even practically. Not surprising considering how this race is going. Hannah, your thoughts about this race? Obviously, you supported O'Rourke. Why?
I think that Beto's run a different kind of campaign, something that we saw a little bit of in 2016, but that we saw way more of in 2018, and that I think that we're going to see a lot more of in 2020 and continue.
Different how?
So Beto O'Rourke, he hasn't taken any PAC money, and he visited every single county in the entire state of Texas. And I think we're going to see a lot more of reaching out and a lot more of going across the entire state to make sure that the campaign is representative of everyone's beliefs in the state.
Hannah, I'm also curious, as a young female voter, what is important to you as a woman who voted today?
I think as a woman, it's really important in the face of the Me Too movement to work towards electing officials, men and women, who are going to help support women and help women in the face of this pervasive culture of sexual harassment that we see across every occupation in the United States. And I think that it's also important for me as a woman voter to help support candidates who I know will protect reproductive freedom.
All right, Hannah, we're going to interrupt you real quickly. Associated Press is now calling the governor's race already. The incumbent Greg Abbott, according to the Associated Press, is going to win this race. He's up by 9 percentage points here with only 2% of the totals coming in, but the AP is calling this race saying Greg Abbott is going to win. Not surprising in any way, shape, or form.
Not at all.
All right, so we're following the local elections, the state elections closely here. What we want to do now is check on things nationally. Joining us is our Rekha Mutaraj with a look at the midterm elections across the nation. Rekha?
Hey, Len and Mia. We've been talking about this a lot. Midterm elections, oftentimes a reflection of what voters think of the president. And tonight we are watching the balance of power in Congress. We're going to let you know where things stand in just a minute. But first, let's take a look at some of these graphics that we have. The Democrats hoping to flip the House. They will need to net 23 seats to take the majority. And in the Senate, Republicans have a slight majority. They're fighting to hold on to that lead, 51 to 49 Democratic senators. Let's take a look at the House first, which has several races up for grabs. Here at home, it is John Culberson and Lizzie Fletcher. We have been talking about this. Texas's 7th district, one of the closest races in the country. John Culberson has won his last 9 congressional races by more than 56%. So this seems to fare well for him. But Fletcher is running for public office for the first time, and Hillary Clinton narrowly won in this West Houston district back in 2016. So again, a very close race here. In Minnesota, in its 8th district, this is the Republicans' best pickup opportunity of 2018. Republican Pete Sauber, a retired police officer, riding a wave of support tied to President Trump's economic policies. Democrats in that area seem averse to mining, which political analysts say doesn't reflect well on the Democratic opponent, Joe Radinovich. Let's talk about Florida's 27th district. CBS News estimating right now that Democrat Donna Shalala has won. She, of course, is a former Clinton cabinet member. Apparently, they are projecting her win over Republican Maria Salazar, a Cuban TV journalist in Miami. Now, this seat was held by a Republican representative who is retiring, but in the last presidential election, the district went for Hillary Clinton by 20 points. So a lot of people not very surprised by that. In California, the seat in the 49th district is up for grabs with the retirement of 10-term GOP Congressman Darrell Issa. Now, President Trump has endorsed Diane Harkey, who is a former mayor of Dana Point, who has served 3 terms in the state assembly. Former President Obama has endorsed her opponent, who has never held public office. Now, a lot of things are happening right now. There are several races, but these House races could actually come down to California, and this is why. 7 races there are being watched. It could take days, even weeks, to get those results if they are as close as people are projecting them to be because of voting provisions in that state. Also, the mail-in ballots in California need to be counted as well. Now, if Democrats take the House majority, of course, Nancy Pelosi could return to the Speaker of the House position. If Republicans win, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy is the favorite to replace Speaker Paul Ryan, who is retiring. So we certainly have a lot there on that front. I'm going to check back in with you guys in a few minutes. We're going to talk about the Senate races as well.
All right, Reka, thank you a lot. Let's now go back to the race that everybody is really talking about tonight. Beto O'Rourke and Senator Ted Cruz neck and neck here with just 1% of the precincts reporting. And this is going to be like this probably for most of the night. As Bob Stein said, it may be a while before we know who the winner is here.
Yeah, we could be looking at a long night. We'll just have to see as the returns come in, as things are still early, as polls just closed and the vote count beginning at 8 o'clock here in Harris County after we had those 9 polling locations that had to extend their hours.
And of course, we have Cruz everywhere, including tonight live at the watch parties for Senator Cruz right here in the Houston area, as well as Beto O'Rourke out in El Paso.
And as the votes come in, many are asking, was Senator Cruz hacked? Here's Jason Puckett with a Verify.
Senator Ted Cruz versus Congressman Beto O'Rourke, one of the biggest races this midterm, drawing the nation's eyes towards Texas. And lots of social media users are pointing out, if you go to tedcruz.com, this pops up. Vote and support Beto O'Rourke. So is this real? Was Cruz hacked, or what's really going on here? First off, while this is a real site, tedcruz.com isn't Senator Ted Cruz's official page. That would be this one, tedcruz.org. Now, this isn't a hacker either. We tracked the domain info for tedcruz.com. Turns out the name was bought back in 2004. That's 8 years before the senator ran for his first public office in 2012. Now, the site occasionally updates. It showed support to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama in the past, and it's definitely taking off on social media. But any claims tedcruz.com is the actual site of Senator Ted Cruz, well, those are false. Folks, if you have any other election-related questions or claims, make sure to send us an email. With your Verify, I'm Jason Puckett. Back to you.
All right, so glad we could get through on that. And let's go ahead and take a look now at some more returns. This is for Proposition A. This is that complicated pension plan. We're looking at 74% voting for, 26% voting against it. Once again, I think this is just with early returns coming in.
Proposition A is the drainage for the city of Houston. Proposition B is for a pay increase for firefighters in the city of Houston, where they want a pay raise commensurate with many of the Houston Police Department. And so that's been a big talk. The mayor has said, hey, we cannot afford approximately the $100 million, according to him, that it would take if this were to pass. So we're watching this closely. It is early, folks. But so far, Proposition B is way ahead.
We're joined by some more guests now here in the studio, keeping you up to the minute on everything with the midterm election. You might recognize Vlad Davidiuk.
Okay.
Did I give your last name justice?
That's
okay,
good.
With the Houston Republican Party joining us.
And Otis Evagaro.
Yeah, me and Vlad have the distinct.
You guys.
We don't
and we put you two together.
We don't.
Of the Harris County Democratic Party.
Yes, sir.
I'm just going to call you Otis from now on.
Oh, that's fine.
Is that good?
Most people
Otis
do.
and Vlad.
Okay, Otis and Vlad.
I think a local race that is interesting to talk about, gentlemen, is Judge Ed Emmett, of course. And Ed Emmett, a Republican, very well known, very well liked here in Houston, but there has been some talk and concern about him being so far down on the ballot.
And that's what his commercial has said.
That's a huge focus of his ad.
We can't find you.
And so that he might well be greatly challenged by his opponent, who is relatively unknown up until this election.
Well, it's always a concern when you have a candidate who is as prominent as someone like County Judge Ed Emmett, who is kind of hidden in the ballot. That being said, he and his team have done a great job of making sure that they're highlighting the fact that Republicans need to vote straight ticket, go all the way down the ballot, make sure that each one of those candidates is voted for, including Judge Emmett. And Republican voters know, and even Democrat voters know, that Ed Emmett's on the ballot, and Emmett has done a great job for Harris County, and they're going to deliberately seek him out and vote for him.
Yeah. What are your expectations looking ahead into the night for Republicans, and especially here in the local area, in the Houston area?
It's going to be a very tight night. We know that these races are very highly contested. There's voter enthusiasm on both sides. Otis and I were actually just talking about this right now. How the lines are long, the enthusiasm is on both sides. Calls are into the office off the hook. And so we know that voters are very interested in making sure that their choices are clear. So it's going to be a bit of a night, and it's going to be very close.
Yeah, Otis, let's talk about one of the races. It's Lizzie Fletcher running for the first time against the incumbent John Culberson. You have any thoughts with it? This got a lot of attention in terms of the ads we saw.
There were
on television.
Of ads.
You know, we heard Lion Lizzie, we heard her say that's ridiculous, and on and on and on.
It's interesting. You know, you can't call someone a liar who's never had the job. But you know, with that race, it's interesting because Donald Trump lost that district. That district is changing demographically rapidly at a rapid pace. The suburbs, and then you have we call that wealthy part of Houston, that House District 134 with Sarah Davis in it. That's a lot of West University. And then you go up more into Cypress, the suburbs, which has changed a lot demographically. It's a lot more diverse than what it used to be.
So you're saying the change in the increase in diversity is better for Lizzie Fletcher?
The increase in diversity is definitely better for Lizzie Fletcher.
Because
historically, the diversity backs Democrats, and when you have that high number in Congressional District 7, it bodes well for Lizzie.
All right, so here 3% of the votes in early. We want to point this out. Lizzie Fletcher up by just a few percentage points over John Culberson.
Right.
Yeah. And what do you think this is saying, Vlad, as we look at just this one particular race? And I know it's very early.
Sure.
I want to emphasize that. It is very early. But, you know, I think in a lot of these races, especially in a red state like Texas, you wouldn't maybe anticipate it to be so close and so tight.
Well, no, but here's the case. This race was going to be tight from the get-go because 2016, Hillary Clinton won Congressional District 7. So Democrats have had a target on this race from the day the polls closed on 2016. So they've invested a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort. They even got involved in the primary by trying to influence who Democrat voters would pick to run against John Culberson. So we know from the very beginning that Democrats have been heavily invested in trying to flip this district. That being said, Congressman Culberson and Harris County Republicans have
been aware of that from the get-go, and we've invested a lot of time and effort into that district as well, making sure we get out the vote.
Go ahead.
I think it's really interesting too. You know, you're looking at the seasoned politician, the veteran, versus the newcomer, right? And it's interesting that the newcomer is seeing this much success early on, once again, with just to look at the early votes.
And as Otis pointed out, because the demographics of that district are changing, as you say, historically favors Democrats. Hillary Clinton won this, as you pointed out, in 2016, so not totally surprising, but still, if I were Culberson, you know, it's like, hey, look, I've been here 16 years, you know, on the House Appropriations Committee. I brought money here after Harvey. So, you know, he's got a lot he can point to in this race.
Right.
Yeah, and for us, I mean, it's interesting that you say it's a newcomer, right? We do not think that Texas is a Republican state. We believe that Texas is a non-voting state. And this is what happens when you get people engaged. You're seeing the results of higher engagement with people. You're seeing more people focus on registering people to vote. You're seeing more volunteers. You're seeing more activists. You're seeing more people just engaged in the process. Young people. 18% of the electorate in early vote was voters under the age of 35. That's huge. That demographic is up 500% since the last turnout in Texas. So the more we engage voters, the more you're going to see Democrats getting elected up and down the ballot.
All right, Otis, we're going to interrupt you. Let's go to the Ted Cruz campaign out in the Galleria area. And we understand Mattress Mac is talking to the folks there. Let's listen to him.
Another 6 years in the Senate of the United States. So on behalf of my friends Heidi and Ted Cruz and their wonderful daughters, I want to thank everybody for coming here tonight. Let's have a great party and a great result. God bless Texas, God bless you, and God bless Ted and Heidi Cruz. Thank you.
All right, just heard from Mattress Mac, Jim McIngvale there at the headquarters tonight for Ted Cruz, sharing his excitement, his faith, and his belief who will come on top there tonight. It was interesting because I didn't recall in an election season here, at least in recent times, where we've seen Jim McIngvale in an ad, and he actually did an ad in support of Culberson.
He did, and Congressman Culberson has been very focused on flood relief for Harris County, especially for CD7. He was able to bring millions of dollars to the district, and so he's very much in tune with what those needs are and what needs to be done, and that's something that Mattress Mac has clearly been actively engaged in, especially considering what happened during Hurricane Harvey.
Sure.
So it's not surprising that that he would come out in support of his friend John Culberson. So it's good to see.
Otis pointed this out earlier. He made a point that Beto O'Rourke has also made, that in Texas it's about a non-voting state. There's so many people who have not voted, have gone to the polls for years. I've heard this, particularly not just young people, but among Hispanic voters. Not saying which way they would vote, but they're just underrepresented in the number of people who have voted.
I think that's partially true.
Yeah.
I think, but I think the other part of that is that up until recently, throw a little shade at Otis, Democrats have had a hard time finding good candidates to motivate their voters. It's hard to get somebody off the couch, hard to get somebody into the polling place when they don't have someone who is inspiring and someone who activates them. That's one of the reasons we're seeing Beto O'Rourke do so well this year, because he is a candidate who is very eloquent. He's very good at getting his point across, and it can be inspirational for a lot of people. That can motivate people.
We also, and to piggyback off Vlad's point, no shade thrown this way, but also we have a lot of women on the ballot. That's activated a lot of our base as well too. Women are voting at a really good rate right now, and that's helped. And usually, you know, studies show that you have to ask a woman 7 times to run before she can even consider it. Not actually like do it, but consider it.
Yeah.
Now you've seen all these women activated up and down the ballot. That's inspiring a demographic as well, and Beto's done a great job of engaging and unifying people.
The more people in, the better it is. I don't care who you're voting for.
Right. Exactly.
That's what we want.
Otis, Vlad, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Let's check out some more numbers now. We've talked quite a bit with these two guests about this race, talking about District 7. This is just early returns thus far. 1% of precincts reporting. Lizzie Fletcher with the lead there, 53%. John Culberson with 47%. Our Larry Seward is covering this race. He joins us now live from Culberson's campaign party. Larry?
Yeah, Mia, since that news about those early returns came out, the mood here hasn't changed, not one bit. Listen, Representative Culberson expected a tight race. He told me he prepared as if he was going to be behind. That's something he does in every campaign, but none more than this time. We saw him earlier out at voting precincts, places that have been strong Republican strongholds in past elections, really for the last 50 years or so, making sure that things were in order. He believes that turnout is in his favor. He believes that will turn the tide here in his favor. In fact, he didn't feel like he was in that much jeopardy because he says voters in District 7 know his record. His slogan, if you can see the signs behind me, keeps his word. He talks about being the right person in the right place at the right time, helping expand the Katy Freeway, being a member of the House Appropriations Committee, getting money for this area to help recover after Hurricane Harvey. All of those things are things he's been reminding voters, things he's hearing from voters telling him, we have not forgotten what you've done for us, John. We have not been, in his words, deceived by Lizzie Fletcher's attack ads, which we have all seen have been anything but kind, but he believes that's backfired on her. And again, voter turnout, he believes at the end of the day, will turn the tide in his favor. Then, Mia?
See, that's Larry Seward at the Culberson campaign. Sherman Chow now is with the Lizzie Fletcher campaign. Sherman?
Yeah, hey, we are here at the watch party for Lizzie Fletcher, and obviously people happy and encouraged by these early numbers. They're just coming up here, and take a look at the reaction behind us. Actually, right now they're looking at the O'Rourke Cruz numbers, which are basically tied. But of course, here at the Fletcher camp, she is up with these early returns right now, 53 to 47%. Alan here, tell me real quickly, sort of what do you make of these early numbers?
Well, I think it's very positive for the Democrats. We're looking right now, Beto is neck to neck with Ted Cruz, which is positive.
And for the Fletcher camp, I mean, she's up a couple of points.
And Lizzie apparently is ahead right now, and that is just great news. That's wonderful, and hopefully it'll hold up for the rest of the evening.
Alrighty. So again, the room filling up here. No big cheers yet. I think again, folks cautiously optimistic, but obviously you gotta, they're happy with these early numbers, and she is encouraged. Fletcher says even with these polls that she was basically tied, she feels like that those polls didn't reach out to many of the new voters, which she feels like would be turning out for her. The millennials, they may not have been counted in some of these polls, so she's feeling particularly strong, if you will, with the returns coming in. So we will see how the evening turns out, y'all.
That's right, Sherman. The polls are one thing, the actual election is another. Sherman Chow with Lizzie Fletcher's camp there tonight. All right, another big race lots of us are talking about here in the area. This is District 2, and it looks like Dan Crenshaw right now, early voting returns with the lead at 53%, Todd Litton with 46%. I think here, Dan Crenshaw, definitely a recognizable, memorable figure in this political landscape. He's definitely stood out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a combat veteran, lost an eye to an IED in Afghanistan, trying to serve his country. It's unfortunate what Saturday Night Live tried to make a joke out of him. But at the same time, you have someone who is a newcomer to this process. He's never held elected office. Mm-hmm. He's trying to succeed Ted Poe, who is really big shoes to fill. But Dan has really done a really good job of connecting with voters across Harris County. Otis was referencing a little while earlier how the youth vote has really increased during this cycle. And a lot of people want to attribute that entirely to Beto, but we know for a fact, looking at the numbers, Dan Crenshaw's pulling a lot of those young voters.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because we had a young voter here earlier, Ben Prawler, and he mentioned Dan Crenshaw repeatedly.
Absolutely.
So I think you're right, he's making that connection.
Yeah.
All right, our midterm elections special coverage continues. Here's another look at some of the races we're following tonight.
welcome back to our coverage of the 2018 midterm elections.
Yes, we are moving quite swiftly here. The remaining polls in Harris County closed just 25 minutes ago.
Right now, we can tell you Republican Governor Greg Abbott will be elected to a second term. The Associated Press calling this race like 10 minutes ago, defeating Democratic challenger Lupe Valdez. Now to the hottest race on the ticket tonight. We're talking about Republican Senator Ted Cruz, the incumbent against his challenger, Congressman Beto O'Rourke. You can see O'Rourke up just 3 percentage points with 4% of the precincts reporting. We will watch this throughout the night. As we get closer, as we get later, the numbers become more significant.
And we are covering both candidates. First, Jason Miles is at the Ted Cruz watch party in the Galleria area. Jason.
Yeah, this crowd just erupted in applause. I think they saw that Governor Abbott result on the big screen here. Mattress Mac just spoke, giving his endorsement to Ted Cruz. And a little earlier, Ted Cruz's father, Raphael, gave the opening prayer, if you will, here at this watch party, saying he hopes for a, quote, red tsunami tonight, including the re-election of his son. My colleague Marcelino Benito is out in El Paso covering the O'Rourke campaign.
Jason, doors have opened here. People are just pouring in. They're dancing. They're happy with these early numbers. The campaign tells me as long as they can keep it under 5, once early votes are counted, they definitely feel like they're in this thing. So right now they are more optimistic than they were an hour ago now that polls have closed. But they're still watching this very closely. Back to you.
All right, Marcelino Benito, thank you so much. Now look at the race for Harris County Judge. Incumbent Ed Emmett here facing Lena Hidalgo. And look at this. Once again, early returns here, but this is pretty tied up at 49% for both candidates.
All right, it's a quick check on the race for Texas 7th Congressional District. Again, Lizzie Fletcher, John Culberson, the incumbent. He's behind, but only 2% of the precincts reporting so far. And as our guests have pointed out, this is a district that has gone Democratic, has gone for Democratic candidates in the past, so this would not be a total shock. We'll have to watch it.
Election results continue all night. Be sure to stay with us both here on TV and online and Facebook. All right, back here with our special midterm elections coverage on KHOU 11, taking a look at some of the races here. Race for Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick with the lead with 50% of the vote versus Mike Collier with just 48%. This is with about 4% of the precincts reporting.
Yeah, so far we've not seen more than 4% of the precincts reporting in all of the races that we have been looking at. So that tells you how early it is as we move along. I don't think we really get a sense, unless you have like the governor's race, he's already been declared the winner. Right. That was not a surprise. You know, he really didn't have a challenger per se. Lupe Valdez known, but not known well enough.
Something that did come as a surprise, and that we were talking about in that pause there that we took, was County Judge Ed Emmett versus Lena Hidalgo, 49%. This is neck and neck here. You gentlemen both commented about this. Why do you find this so interesting and so close?
Well, Lena Hidalgo is an unknown candidate. She has no previous elected office experience. Ed Emmett has been serving as Harris County Judge for more than a decade now, and you would expect voters to reward his service because he's been there through all these hurricanes. Hunker down. Through Hurricane Harvey now, and it's interesting that what we're seeing Democrats turn out strongly for their candidate, but at the end of the day, I'm sure that voters are going to bring Ed Emmett back.
Yeah.
Right. It's close for a reason. Now, Lena's found her voice lately, and she's had some terrific ads out there, and she's starting to become a known name around Harris County, which is really good. People are understanding the nuance that she wants to bring to the county commissioner's court. They understand that she's going to be willing to work with Rodney Ellis like they haven't been working together before. Also, hopefully Adrian Garcia makes it up there as well, too. So Lena has definitely been making a name for herself. And the Democratic Party has done a great job in trying to amplify her message and making sure that people understand where she is on the ballot and making sure that some Democrats that want to vote for Ed Emmett vote for Lena Hidalgo.
Yeah, I have to say, I did not see, not that this defines a candidate, and a campaign ad from Lena until maybe yesterday.
Yes, this week.
Yeah, and I think that partly on her campaign being strategic, but if you go on Facebook and Twitter and social media and digital, when we talk about the youth vote, these are the things that they are seeing. It's not so much about the TV thing anymore, right? People talk about the NFL ratings being down. It's not down, it's just that people are watching it, streaming it, right?
Well, we know about these things, Otis.
Right, so you guys know, we're digital right now.
We're streaming right now.
She has been doing that
where she's been
consistently
doing
in her race. If you're paying attention to that race, you've seen a strong digital presence with Lena Hidalgo. Now, I'm not saying that is the end-all, be-all. You still got to have your field team and getting out there and getting out the vote, knocking doors and phone banking and things like that, but Lena's definitely had a strong presence digital.
Yeah. Do you think that means, Vlad, that there has to be a different approach, rather, with the Republican Party, or are they taking the same approach just differently?
It's one of those things where you have to have all the pieces in place. Right. All the pieces fit together like a puzzle. You can't really swap out one piece and expect the rest of it to work. So this is a comprehensive kind of situation. What Republicans are facing is a rapidly diversifying, rapidly growing, rapidly changing county. And so you have to have candidates who are responsive to their constituents, who are answerable to their voters, and who want to make sure that they're focused on those things.
Vlad, thank you so much. We want to get out to right now Sylvia Garcia speaking live.
You have made history. Esta victoria es de nosotros. Juntos hemos logrado algo histórico. Thank you to Congressman Gene Green for his years of service. And of course, right at his side always is Helen Green. But you know, Gene not only served, but he set the bar for constituency services from elected officials. And we all thank him for that. I'm honored to follow in his footsteps. Thank you to our friends in the labor movement who have supported our campaign both financially and with boots on the ground, and that was very important. Very important. Thank you to the hundreds of individual donors, the Democratic clubs, and allies that made this victory possible. And most importantly, thank you to my family, standing with me today. Their love, encouragement, and support over the years is what made it possible for a poor kid from Palito Blanco to come to the great city of Houston and become a United States member of Congress. My friends, only in Houston, Texas, a city of opportunity, can that happen. You know, go Badgers! Yeah, we got beat almost all the time, but you're right, go Badgers. Well, many family members and other friends here know that this wasn't just last November when we started this venture, because it really began in 1992, the first year of the woman. This campaign has been about 25 years of hard work. We have accomplished what we set out to do. We won, and without even knowing, we also have made history, because tonight, I joined Veronica Escobar from El Paso and being the first two Latinas to be elected to Congress from the great state of Texas. You know, as someone said earlier, it's about time. It's about time. And in those 25 years that we've been working hard, I've been honored to have your support, and you have helped me to be the first Latina city controller, the first Hispanic and the first woman in her own right on Commissioner's Court, and the first Latina in the Texas Senate from Harris County. But you know, it's never been about being a first. It's always been about being the best. Always been about being the best. And every one of those challenges has prepared me to be the best today in making a difference for the people I serve. Now we're ready to take on our most difficult challenge of our lives, which is to go to the United States Congress and stand up to Donald Trump and fight for you. Well, it may be too early to call now, but I predict that the Democrats will take the Congress back. We will. So thanks to you, I will be a part of the majority in Congress that will be ready to push back against Donald Trump and his heartless immigration policies that separate children from their families. I will be ready for the fight for an economy that works for all of us, not just the wealthiest Americans. I will be ready to work hard to bring high-paying, quality jobs to our district, jobs with benefits and jobs that will hold our families together and not.
Listening to Sylvia Garcia declaring herself the winner of the congressional seat, the former state senator, now moving on decisively with 75% of the votes in early voting returns. Bob, your thoughts about the win and her comments about winning the majority in Congress, if that happens, what it means for the White House?
Well, I think what you're going to see if the House turns Democratic is what the Republicans were doing in the early part of President Obama's second term, and that is engaging in a sort of, some called it witch hunts and investigations, and the Democrats have threatened, some Democrats, including our own Congressman Al Green, that they'll start an impeachment hearing on the president. I think the Democrats probably will have to temper that if they get the majority, but they haven't gotten the majority yet.
Right.
They're leading in a good number of seats, and still the numbers seem to suggest they will get a slim majority, maybe 20-seat majority, but again, it's too early to tell. And of course, if Sylvia Garcia goes to the House as part of the majority party for Harris County, that means a lot. She will get some prized positions, largely because I think of how Beto O'Rourke is doing tonight. Democrats are going to want to invest in the Texas blue wave, wherever it may be on the horizon.
Yeah, I think, you know, we mentioned this earlier in one of our newscasts, Texas quite possibly turning purple. How do you feel about it, and what's your observation about that?
What it's done is it's turned, I think demographically it's beginning to get clearly more non-Anglo, non-white. And that does favor the Democrats. But I think your last guest on the panel here said something very important.
Made that point. Yeah.
He said that Republicans have to deal. They're on the wrong side of history, at least in this part of the country. We are no longer a majority white community. We're no longer a community that cares only about guns and immigration. There's a whole wide range of issues, education and of course health care, that the Democrats have seemingly done very well tonight. No matter how Beto O'Rourke does, or if Lizzie Fletcher, or for that matter, Ms. Hidalgo here in Harris County, the Democrats are back, and this is not a fluke. They've been doing this since 2008.
Yeah. As we're looking at the returns here, 5%, that's the most we've seen thus far. Tonight, Beto O'Rourke with just 1% more than Ted Cruz right now. We know this one's going to be a close one, and we've been talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, the poll showed a closer race at the end here. I'm still not optimistic. About this being an early night.
You said Cruz by 5 points.
I still think Cruz is somewhere between 3 and 5, but again, I think what O'Rourke has done is stunning, particularly in areas like Tarrant County we mentioned before, Hayes County. We're seeing numbers in early voting that show that even in places like Williamson County, a bastion of Republicans, Beto O'Rourke is holding Ted Cruz to less than a 5-point margin. So what it raises maybe is less about the blue wave than about Ted Cruz. And this was a campaign in which Ted Cruz wasn't anywhere near as popular as Governor Abbott, or for that matter, some of the others.
Will O'Rourke carry Harris County?
Oh, he will carry Harris County, and he'll carry it by, I think, 12 to 15 points, better than Hillary Clinton. What's even more important is the number of votes.
Yeah.
You're going to be getting, as much as a 200,000 to 300,000 vote advantage.
I talked to both Cruz and O'Rourke during the campaign, and Senator Cruz said part of the people who have not liked his campaign is because the left hates the president. So he basically said, no, it's not me. It's the attack on the president that filters down to me. You agree?
No. If that were true, if the brand were weak, you would see other Republican candidates statewide. You wouldn't have heard Greg Abbott being announced with 2% of the vote. This is, I think, a very personal vote. It's not the Democrats that are not voting for Ted Cruz. Of course they're not. It's Republicans who don't seem comfortable with Ted Cruz. There could be a whole host of reasons, including the fact that he disagreed with the president and wouldn't endorse the president at the National Convention. But I think there are also many Republicans like George W. Bush and more moderate centrist Republicans here in Harris County. Look at key precincts in River Oaks. They didn't like Donald Trump, but 3 and 4%. I'm looking at numbers in River Oaks, and I'm betting tonight there'll be about a 5 to 7 point difference. Now, some of it's Ted Cruz. He may not be personable. He may not even be somebody who Republicans feel they agree with, but I don't think it's just Donald Trump.
You were mentioning predictions that you made earlier. Let's talk about a prediction that you made that is now playing out, and that is the race for Harris County Judge with Ed Emmett and Lena Hidalgo. 49% here for both candidates, really neck and neck.
Yeah, I mean, Ms. Hidalgo's a fine person, and I'm sure in a different office would be a good first-time candidate. What makes her so unusual in this race, so ironic, is that Ed Emmett, in anybody's poll, is the most popular, highly regarded elected official in years. My own polling had him in the 80s. We spoke on Monday morning. He was telling me that it's going to be a close race, and he was absolutely right.
And so it's 7% of the precincts reporting, I believe, on this one, and it's dead even. You think he's going to lose, really?
Well, let me say this. I think the race is too close to call. What you've got to remember is that 49 even is the early vote. That early vote was 855,000 personal early votes and another 90,000 mail-in.
We're going to cut you off real quick.
I think this race comes down to the 200,000 today.
All right. Mayor Sylvester Turner talking right now about Proposition B
where do
and
we
paying
get the money
firefighters.
to do all of the other things? And then where do we get the money to pay for police, for the municipal services, for parks, for libraries? Where does all of that money come from? And where do we get the money for the local match for from Hurricane Harvey? Where do we get that from? Now, I fully understand the emotional appeal. It was a very strong one. I got that. I got that. But at the same time, there are no freebies.
And you mentioned the options that you're going to review starting tomorrow. What options are we talking about? What's on the table if you were to look at this?
I have said from over the last several months to you all individually and collectively that if Proposition B passes, there will be reductions and a disruption of services. I've said that several times. Nothing has changed. My position hasn't changed. I wasn't just bluffing or being a demagogue. I said that several times. And I say to you now that every vote has been cast and votes are starting to, being counted, Mayor, has your position changed, or would you like to lessen what you have said in the past? No. No. Because the numbers speak for themselves. Okay? I said there will be reductions. I said there will be disruption of services. And I'm saying that to you now that every vote is cast. I'm saying that to you now. And the reality is, there is no one group that's going to be immune. This vote was not even in the best interest of my firefighters. It wasn't in the best interest of the 4,000 firefighters. It wasn't.
Because even they will lose jobs?
Absolutely. So it wasn't even in their best interest. What I would say to you, maybe people can, Everyone can understand this. If you have a limited amount of resources to work with, if you have limited amount, and if you increase that your liabilities greater than what you have to work with, and you're obligated to balance your books, how do you balance your books?
We've been listening to Mayor Sylvester Turner of the city of Houston talking about Proposition B, which right now is winning. You see the numbers there. And essentially, Prop B means a large increase for firefighters. The mayor is saying, look, if Proposition B wins, it will mean a reduction and disruption of services. He even says it is not even in the best interest of firefighters. I'm sure many firefighters would disagree with the mayor, but he is already talking about what will happen if this ends up going down like we see the numbers here. It is, again, early, but the mayor has been saying for quite some time that he didn't think this was in the best financial interest of the city.
Because it's been an issue for quite some time, and
Yeah.
we've watched it go on to voters, and now they're letting their voices be heard.
And the backstory, of course, the backstory here is that the mayor offered a certain percentage increase, about 9% a year, somewhere around there.
And it wasn't good enough.
And the firefighters want about 2.5 times that.
Right.
And so he said, look, we can't go there. So now we have this referendum, and voters are saying, looks like we may be going there. What do you think about this, Bob?
Well, I don't think this was ever it was never in doubt that it would pass. The real question is how large a margin. Anything over 16, I think it puts the mayor and the council in an awkward position. But the irony of this also is that this may settle what has been almost a 12-year protracted negotiations.
Yes.
By having a referendum and the voters approving it, the firemen have to sit at the table with the mayor. Nobody can walk away. Now, they've always accused the mayor of making what I call false promises or ill-conceived, but the mayor has said, I've got real plans, real proposals. I think what the mayor has now is a real bargaining chip, and that will probably be something called the manpower study. We haven't talked about that, but it is a report done by the mayor's office that shows that we're a little bit, how shall we say, overstaffed in the fire department and poorly appropriated. We fight fewer fires and more EMTs.
Harder to discuss that if this wins, though.
Right.
No, I think it actually gets much easier.
You think?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Because
We'll
there's
see
no
what
way
happens.
they don't have the money.
All right.
I mean,
we'll see.
that's pretty clear.
Okay, we want to go ahead and check in on, the hottest race here in Texas for certain. We're talking about Ted Cruz versus Beto O'Rourke. Ted Cruz working to be reelected. We have our Jason Miles, who is live with Cruz's camp tonight. Let's check in with him now. Jason, how's it going?
Hey there, guys. A Cruz campaign official is speaking to the crowd here. Several hundred people gathered in the ballroom here at the Hilton Post Oak, kind of explaining how the numbers are coming in, how they're looking at different counties to kind of gauge how they maybe should be celebrating or hoping to celebrate tonight, telling people if they're a little bit tensed up right now by looking at the return so far, well, they can relax a little bit, at least at this point, as a lot of results still have yet to come in, but a pretty festive atmosphere thus far. Several hundred people, as I mentioned, in here, many of them carrying Ted Cruz signs, cruising to victory, things like that, and some pretty outrageous outfits as well, as you might imagine, the color scheme being red, white, and blue. So far, we've heard from Mattress Mac, the beloved furniture salesman here in Houston. We also heard from Ted Cruz's father, Raphael, a man he talks about a lot on the campaign trail, or did on the campaign trail, a man who immigrated to Texas back in 1957. That's something his son likes to talk about in relation to the whole immigration debate, saying, like his father, he wants people to get in line, take their turn, and await entry into the U.S. and do it legally. Obviously, a lot of these people are hoping he pulls out a victory and goes on to the U.S. Senate for another 6-year term. We have yet to hear from Senator Cruz himself. He had nothing scheduled today on this election day. Obviously, he crisscrossed Harris County yesterday and beyond, hitting several of the suburbs. I'm told he worked the phones today, presumably from his home here in Houston, but will eventually make his way over to the Hilton as well. Guys?
All right, Jason is live at the Senator Cruz campaign where anticipation is building. Let's go out west to El Paso for the campaign headquarters of his opponent, Beto O'Rourke, and our Marcelino Benito is there. Marcelino?
Guys, doors opened here about 45 minutes ago, and people are still pouring in. I want to step out of the way, show you the crowd and what it's looking like. I heard Jason mention he had a couple hundred folks at the Ted Cruz watch party. There are a lot more than a couple hundred people here at the Beto O'Rourke election night party, and they are still filtering in by the dozens. This is a ballpark, guys. This is where the El Paso Chihuahuas, a minor league ballpark, typically play baseball. And Beto O'Rourke is managing to fill it up today with supporters. I want to tell you about an interesting conversation I just had with folks with the campaign. Julian Castro isn't part of the campaign, but he's a surrogate for the campaign, has spoken out on behalf of the campaign often. And here's what he's telling me. They're feeling really good about the numbers they're seeing. Their goal, after the early votes were counted, were to keep this tight. If those numbers were less than 5, if Beto was at least in striking distance, under 5 points after those early votes were counted, they feel very good about their chances in this race. A lot of it would depend on what happens today. I heard Bob mentioning here there in studio that it depends on turnout today on election day. Beto O'Rourke also said that himself yesterday. He said he would need a massive voter turnout on election day as well. But if they can keep that gap close after those early votes are counted, they think they have a chance to pull this off. We've talked about it most of the night. If this were to happen, this would be a historic upset. Again, the numbers are very early, but the campaign is feeling pretty good about the numbers as they're coming in and what they're seeing. And as for the atmosphere here, guys, it is very festive. People are dancing, they're waving Beto signs. This campaign has inspired a lot of people. It has brought out first-time voters. Today, the campaign was live streaming on Facebook as Beto O'Rourke went around El Paso trying to encourage voters to head to the polls, and they were profiling a lot of first-time voters, a lot of older voters, and a lot of young voters that had never cast ballots before. He is counting on all those voters who have turned out to somehow turn this conservative state into blue in a Senate race they haven't won in 30 years. We'll see. We'll wait and see what happens, guys. Back to you.
Marcelino in El Paso with the O'Rourke campaign. Let's look at the board and show you the most recent numbers. Again, about neck and neck with about 9% of the precincts reporting. Not totally surprising given how hard fought this race has been and how much excitement has been generated on both sides of the campaign. This has been a long, grueling campaign. O'Rourke visiting every county in Texas. Senator Cruz coming to Houston often, crisscrossing the state often. It has been quite something to watch, Bob.
Plenty of ads as well, too. We've seen so many ads from both of these candidates as well, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you got is a Beto O'Rourke that was playing a totally unconventional campaign. And Ted Cruz, who was always playing catch-up. I think in June and July, our lieutenant governor marched to Washington and said to the president, we've got a real race here. And I think nobody really, even on the Democratic side, I'm sure the Castro brothers are shaking their heads and wondering, if we had run, how could we have run any better than Beto O'Rourke? He's done something that I actually think in many ways taking a page out of the president's campaign. Nobody thought the president was going to get a nomination. Nobody thought he'd be elected president. And he conducted a campaign that was anything but, how can I say, conventional. Always twittering, always talking past his own base. Yet, of course, he's president. I'm not suggesting there's any other comparison, but this is not the way Democrats run campaigns. You don't go to 254 counties when only 70 of them really matter in terms of votes. But Beto O'Rourke is right there in the hunt. Whether he wins or loses, I think he's made an impression.
And it's the money as well that he's had, too.
Oh, he had money, and he raised that money the old-fashioned way, $1 at a time. Many said came from outside the state. Yes, he became a national celebrity, a sort of cultural star, particularly with young people. But the $15, $20, $25 contributions, it gave him a big edge in the last, I'd say week to 2 weeks when he just saturated TV and radio. Not necessarily the most effective way to communicate, because his base, many young people, don't watch TV, sadly, for us.
But for Senator Cruz, Bob, though, I mean, he brought out all the heavy hitters here.
He brought the president here.
The president was here. The vice president came. Donald Trump Jr. came.
And they talked past large swaths of voters. Now, if they win, they win. And at the end of the day, what they'll say is, we'll do it again the next time. But I think what Beto O'Rourke showed was, like your last guest, you can't ignore what's happening in Texas. The demography of the state is changing, and Republicans have got to reach out and address that.
All right, we're going to take a look at some more races here in tonight's midterm elections 2018. You see here Ted Cruz with just 1% more than Beto O'Rourke, and this is with 10% of the precincts reporting.
Welcome back to our coverage of the 2018 midterm elections.
The polls closed nearly 2 hours ago in most places, except for 9 spots in our area, which closed at 8 o'clock. Here's a look now at a big race we are watching closely tonight involving District 7. This is a battle between Republican John Culberson and his Democratic challenger, Lizzie Fletcher. And you can see here with 10% of the precincts reporting, Fletcher with the lead with 52%. Culberson with 48% of the vote.
Yeah, Larry Seward and Sherman Chow are at both watch parties tonight.
Let's go to Larry Seward first, who is with Culberson supporters. Larry.
Yeah, Mia, Culberson has over 100 supporters here. They're still mingling, some watching the screen, watching these returns, remaining confident in John Culberson. Culberson told us that he believes he's the right person, right place at the right time, that the people inside District 7 have not forgotten what he's done to improve the quality of life here. His position on the Appropriations Committee, able to get funding when this district needs it. He is also using sort of the significance of this seat to drive voters, he believes, to the polls, saying that voting for Lizzie Fletcher would allow Nancy Pelosi to become Speaker. And he's saying people in District 7 realize that's a potential, realize that's at stake, and they do not want that to happen. Let's go now to Sherman Chow, who is with the Fletcher campaign.
Yeah, I tell you what, as you can see behind me, the room is definitely filling up, and the folks have been glued to the big screens watching the returns nationally. You'll hear a periodic roar or cheer when some of the numbers come back, particularly in the Cruz-O'Rourke race. And folks here absolutely encouraged by the early numbers for Lizzie Fletcher. She is, of course, a first-time candidate running, and she believes that the millennials, that the younger voters are the ones that are going to really help push her through the top. Back to y'all.
All right, thank you so much, Sherman. This is perhaps the hottest race on the ticket. Republican Senator Ted Cruz and his Democratic challenger, Congressman Beto O'Rourke. This is a close one, as many analysts predicted. Cruz with 50% of the vote, O'Rourke with 49%, with 12% of the precincts reporting.
Yeah, it's going to be a close one all night long. Our coverage continues right now online. You can watch us at KHOU.com. All right, welcome back to our special coverage streaming of the midterm elections. A couple of highlights so far, not really big surprises. Governor Abbott declared a winner. He's going back to the governor's office again in Austin. Sylvia Garcia wins her congressional race tonight. Not a totally big surprise, but those are a couple of the winners that we know so far.
Yeah, another very close and tight race. A lot of people didn't expect, except for our analyst, Bob Stein, the race for Harris County Judge. Ed Emmett, Elena Hidalgo, pretty much neck and neck at 49%. You know, it is a high stakes election with the balance of power in the United States Congress. Joining us now is Rekha Mudaraj with a look at the numbers there. Rekha?
Yeah, Len and Mia, let's talk about the Senate. Democrats would need to gain 2 seats to win a majority. So do Republicans have a better chance of keeping control there? Well, political analysts seem to think so. Incumbent Democrats are really defending their seats in states where President Trump won back in 2016. And we have a couple updates to bring you right now. Senator Joe Donnelly of Indiana lost his re-election bid to Mike Braun. He's a Republican businessman. This is a blow to Democrats in their fight to win the Senate majority. Also in Tennessee, Republican Marsha Blackburn has been elected as Tennessee's first woman senator. She beat Democrat Phil Bredesen. This one was close, but Blackburn held a lead in a solid Republican state. In the meantime, here we are talking about Exhibit A in the Senate race, Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke. Senator Ted Cruz won by 16 percentage points back in 2012. President Trump, won here in Texas with a nearly 10-point margin in 2016. No Democrat has been elected statewide in Texas in 20 years. Still, Beto O'Rourke has garnered large crowds visiting every city in Texas, raised $10 million in the second quarter. That compares to Cruz's $4 million that was raised. A lot of buzz around him nationwide as well. And for good measure, I guess Beyonce just a few hours ago on Instagram let us know that she voted for Beto. In the meantime, more Senate seats are likely to flip. In North Dakota, polls are actually favoring Republican candidate Kevin Cramer. It is the most endangered seat for Democrats there. In Arizona, this is a big race we're watching. Republican Jeff Flake retiring, so it's an open seat. And it's a very tight race between Republican Martha McSally and Democrat Kirsten Sinema. That is her fellow congresswoman, who has a slim lead there. Either way, this is a big deal because for the first time in the state's history, Arizona voters will elect a woman to the U.S. Senate. In Nevada, the state went narrowly for Hillary Clinton in 2016, so it is possible that Democratic Representative Jackie Rosen could pull out a win over incumbent Dean Heller. Again, the Senate race is where Republicans are on the offense. They have a slight lead with 51 senators, but on a night like this, really anything is possible. Again, when we talk about the House, Democrats have actually picked up several House seats, but in the Senate, their path to winning control there is slowly closing. We're keeping tabs on this. We'll bring you updates as soon as they come in.
Very busy out there across the country. Reka, thanks. Here's the race we're watching here. That is going to be, we're going to be watching this all night long. You see Ted Cruz with about 12% of the precincts reporting very slim lead, 1% over Beto O'Rourke. It is essentially neck and neck. At some point, we're going to see how this falls, but it's going to be a while. And here we go. This is in Congressional District number 7. Lizzie Fletcher, first time running over the incumbent John Culberson, up by 4% with 10% of the precincts reporting. This is a district that has voted for Democratic candidates in the past, but always voted for Culberson in terms of this seat, but they voted Democratic in terms of the presidential races. So this is very interesting to watch. The governor's race already been called. Greg Abbott is returning to Austin as governor of Texas. He was way ahead of Lupe Valdez early, and the Associated Press called this race early.
All right, well, we're joined by some more guests right now in the studio with us. One gentleman here, you'd recognize him as part of a legendary rap duo, talking about Bun B, Houstonian, all the way from Port Arthur, Texas, very engaged in the process, and then also a Democrat as well, we should mention, supporting Beto O'Rourke, and also joined here by conservative Murad Fiki. Absolutely. Wonderful. Got the last name correct. Thank you so much for both joining us, gentlemen. The night is still young, although the polls are closed. How are you feeling thus far with what you're seeing tonight?
Well, I like the progression. Obviously, we're not going to get all the victories that we hope to get as far as the Democratic Party is concerned, but I do feel good about where Texas is going. I see that there's been a competitive race all night between Beto and Cruz, and I think 6 of the district seats are a little bit leaning our way. So I'm comfortable with where things are going. Yeah, we're still in play here. Nothing's really blown out. I think Beto still has a good chance because we still haven't had all of Harris County.
And I wonder your thoughts, because we talked to you several years ago. You went out on the campaign trail when then candidate Trump was going across the country, and you're getting feedback from people. I wonder, as you look at what's happening in Texas, are you seeing, do you think, in some ways a referendum on the presidency, or no?
Well, yeah, I think if you look nationwide at the election, I think a lot of it's got to do with people that engaged one way or another based on the way that they perceive the president.
I see.
I think in Texas, you can definitely see that, the ramifications of that. This has been a red state for so many years, and just the implications of some of these districts changing over from Republican to Democrat and having a senatorial race where, you know, for once, and I think over, you know, maybe
30 years.
Yeah, that we have a Democrat that's actually in play. I think it's showing that the state is starting to feel the effects of the election, and that maybe some people that did decide to vote for Trump in the national election may be feeling a little bit, you know, weird about that decision right now.
Murad, as a conservative, how are you feeling about tonight's returns thus far and what you're seeing in the president's impact as well?
It's pretty early. Like Bun said, I think, you know, we still need to see how they're going to look. Even if Ted Cruz loses Harris County, I mean, they're going for the whole state of Texas. So I really don't think Beto O'Rourke is going to turn Texas. But, you know, he might show strong in Harris County. I think that's a possibility. There are some tight races, but it's still early. I do think that, you know, with Trump coming to Houston and packing out the arena, in fact, there were thousands of people outside who couldn't get in.
Yeah.
I think it just stirred the base and motivated everyone who might have not otherwise voted. So I think there's going to be a dark horse coming out.
When I talked to Ted Cruz on the campaign trail, one of the things he pointed out is that Democrats would come to regret what happened with the Brett Kavanaugh nomination, feeling that it would drive more Republicans to the polls based on the protests that was going on during his nomination. You agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's a sad day in our country when you can basically convict someone before having evidence, and basically, this country's built on you're innocent until proven guilty. So without having anybody corroborating the story and just basically crucifying the man, I think that stirred the base and really got a lot of people angry, and even some independents who might vote Democrat one year, Republican one year, I think they came out for the Republicans this year.
Yeah, so you're talking about people being motivated by the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. But I'm interested to know, because you speak to a lot of younger voters, you speak to a lot of minority voters. What do you think is driving them to the polls and to be engaged this time around?
Well, I think people are looking at the policies that this administration is trying to put forth. A lot of people feel, that those policies are not in their favor. And so they want to make sure that people understand exactly what they're getting themselves into with dealing with this current administration. And I think that young people and people of color are trying to fight back a little bit. They feel like they're not being properly represented.
Going to interrupt you right now. Greg Abbott, who was declared winner as the governor of Texas again, is about to speak. Let's listen in to the governor.
I love you too. I want to say thank you to my daughter Audrey for. Come on over here. Come on over here. I want to say thank you to my daughter Audrey for her introduction. She began on the campaign trail with me when she was just 2 years old. And I am now proud to have earned her vote this election that helped me get reelected. And I'm also thankful to my wife of 37 years, the fabulous First Lady of Texas, Cecilia, who also, as you know, is the first Hispanic First Lady in the history of the state of Texas. But most importantly, I want to say thank you to the people of Texas for re-electing me to be governor of the greatest state in the United States of America. Thank you for your trust. Know this, I will never stop fighting for you and your families as we continue to make Texas the premier state in America. Moments ago, I received a phone call from Sheriff Lupe Valdez, sending on her congratulations about the victory, and I thanked her. But also, I told her what I want to tell all Texans, and that is whether or not you voted for me or against me or didn't vote at all, I'm going to go to work every single day working for everybody in this great state. Now, we all know that this past year has been filled with campaigns that have battled under different banners. It's been the red team versus the blue team. Well, now that elections are over and the people have spoken, it is time for all of us to unite under the best banner of them all, and that is the great flag of the Lone Star State, the Texas flag. Listen, the reality is all Texans share a common vision. We expect Texas to be exceptional, and we will make sure it remains exceptional. It's time for us to work toward that shared vision of a brighter future for Texas and put behind us the differences of the campaigns. As Texans, the bonds that we share transcend our differences. Listen, we all want safer communities. We all want more jobs. We all want better schools. And we all want to give our children lives worthy of their promise. These priorities are bigger than any political party because, first and foremost, we are Texans. Listen, Texas is the land of opportunity. I'm living proof that we live in a state where a young man's life can be broken in half and yet still rise up and be governor of this incredible state. As governor, I will continue to ensure that that very brand of opportunity will remain true for generations to come. Now, I want to thank so many people for their hard work in making tonight possible. I want to thank my brother Gary and his wife Denise. I know Gary is here somewhere. Gary is right over here. Gary Abbott.
All right, you've been listening to Governor Greg Abbott giving his acceptance speech. Right now, though, we want to hear from another victor tonight, Sylvia Garcia, winning Congressman Gene Green's old seat, District 29. She spoke earlier. Let's hear some of that.
Thank you to my family standing with me today. Their love, encouragement, and support over the years is what made it possible for a poor kid from Palito Blanco to come to the great city of Houston and become a United States member of Congress. We also have made history because tonight, I joined Veronica Escobar from El Paso and being the first two Latinas to be elected to Congress from the great state of Texas.
All right, you just heard an emotional Sylvia Garcia in her acceptance speech tonight. Let's look at Proposition A in the city of Houston. Overwhelmingly, people are voting for this. This supports increased drainage for the city of Houston. But a more controversial proposition, Proposition B, which would increase pay for Houston firefighters, also winning. This is a proposition that Mayor Sylvester Turner has fought against and campaigned against. You may have heard the commercial. A is good, B is bad, but right now folks are voting against the mayor here, 58% to 42%. What do we have? About 15% of the precincts reporting. So clearly there's a showdown coming if this continues between the mayor and firefighters over just how much they're going to get
and
of
we've
a pay
already
raise.
heard from the mayor saying that there will be disruptions
Yes, he did.
in service as a result. But, you know, we were talking to our guest here about this proposition and the way the voting is going. But you say this comes as no surprise, right?
No.
That people are voting for the firefighters to receive an increase.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any public discrepancies about whether or not there's an issue with our fire department. I think it's pretty across the board that everybody loves our fire department, and I think we want them to get paid properly. I think from a mayoral aspect, it's probably more about finding the money in the budget.
Let me stop you real quick because we got somebody else up at the mic. Dan Crenshaw, congressional candidate, now at the mic. Let's listen.
It was a little interesting. People ask us, you know, are you offended? I'm like, well, I'm from the SEAL teams. We don't really get offended. But we also like it when comedians are actually funny. You know? Let's get back to that, right? Let's get back to being funny. That's what tonight's going to be about. That's what I'm going to talk about later. It's about believing in the best. Hey, what's going on there, Linda? Who's calling? It's your mom. Linda volunteered for us very early on in the election, right from the beginning. No, this election, maybe the next couple of years, and hopefully the next 50 to 100 years, are going to be about understanding what we all believe in together, understanding the foundational values that keep us together. And that used to be comedy. It used to be sports. Let's separate politics from these things. Let's enjoy life together as Americans. Man, that's what I'd like to get back to. We're going to be back. We're going to be back. We got to see how this goes. Okay, it's just you know the deal. Usually we see the results come in at 7, but they came in at 8 this time. The boxes are still coming in. It's looking good. It's looking good. Pray for the rest of our candidates down ballot, please. Please. All right. We'll see you guys in a few minutes.
All All right, so we've been hearing from Dan Crenshaw there, running for Ted Poe's old seat. 53% of the vote. He is ahead of the Democrat Todd Litton in that race in District 2. Something that we were just paying attention to, CBS essentially declaring Ted Cruz the winner in the Texas Senate race here with 51% of the vote. Now, this is what CBS is reporting, and O'Rourke with 48%. We have 23% of the precincts reporting here that you're looking, but CBS is calling it Cruz's race. Our guest here in the studio, I want to get your thoughts on this.
And this follows, before we get to you guys, I know that Bob Stein, our political analyst, he predicted Cruz would win, but he thought it would be in the 5% range, and you can see it's 2 to 3% roughly based on the projection so far. This was a very close race. Bun, I'll start with you.
Well, I'm obviously, as a Democrat, I'm disappointed that they're calling it already. There's still some people out there, but I think a lot of the votes that are left to be counted are coming from small town Texas, and small town Texas tends to vote Republican. So in the end, they just didn't have enough to pull it off.
Yeah, I would say that's too close for comfort. Ted Cruz is not going to be too excited about that margin. I didn't think that Beto O'Rourke was going to pull it off, but that's a close race.
That sure is. All right, let's get out live now to Ted Cruz's camp. That's where our Jason Miles has been monitoring the watch party there. Let's listen in and see what's going on.
Yeah, the crowd just calmed down a little bit, but just a few moments ago there was a big uproar when I think they saw some results over on the big monitor in the room. As you can see, a sea of Ted Cruz supporters. They get a little excited when you mention them in the background. You see their signs, they are excited. They're hoping that Ted Cruz brings home the victory tonight. And as you mentioned, CBS News projecting that he has won re-election to the U.S. Senate, serving Texas another 6 years. Other media outlets projecting the same result. Although a close race here in Texas, people here at the Ted Cruz camp very excited. I can't hear you guys right now, but this crowd is uproarious. Is that a word? I think it is now. Anyway, they're very excited. We have yet to hear from Senator Cruz himself. I'm told he has been home making some calls all day, last-minute campaign calls today. No scheduled events, but we were told a little earlier that we would not expect to see him before around 10 o'clock. Perhaps that'll change now that some results are in and some outlets, including CBS, projecting that Ted Cruz will be the winner tonight. Now they're shouting, build that wall. Something Ted Cruz has said is a priority of his. Immigration, a big issue. Freedom, another issue. And security. He mentioned all three of those on his campaign bus yesterday during a one-on-one interview with me. But again, we'll keep all eyes on the door, awaiting Ted Cruz's arrival to a very, very supportive crowd here tonight, guys.
All right, Jason, thank you so much. Clearly, I think Senator Cruz anticipating a very close race, not expected to come out until another 45 minutes or so, probably doing last-minute campaigning before the polls closed. So he won as many people expected based on what CBS is reporting. Look, 2-3 percentage points, somewhere in that margin. But that was a very tough, hard-fought race, and both men really went at it. They had two debates. They had a couple of debates where one didn't show up, and so it was really something to watch, I have to say.
They had quite a few debates, and more importantly were all of those ads. You know, for every Beto ad, there was a Cruz ad, and they were nonstop in almost every single break. And each man worked tirelessly the past few months, getting out there and meeting with voters and so forth. Murad, as the conservative here with us right now, your thoughts?
Like I said, I really think this is way too close for comfort.
But a win is a win.
Yeah.
A win is a win.
It is, but you know, like Bun B said, I think we also have to look at the future and not take these very close wins with a grain of salt. You have to see what's happening beneath the surface. I didn't expect Ted Cruz to win Harris County, but I felt he was going to have a huge margin overall, and to be within 2 percentage points, that's very close for comfort. I mean, you see Greg Abbott already declared victory here 9 p.m. You know, so just to see the big difference in the margins on those two races, it's a little bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah, but you are victorious, though. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Bun, how are you feeling?
Well, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that Greg Abbott won. No one really had a problem with the job he did over the last year. He stood up pretty strong for Harvey, and I think for a lot of people in Texas, that's pretty much all that they expected. But I mean, you know, I think Beto has to feel good about the race that he put on, about the support that he got, and I think, you know, Texas Democrats could be looking very forward to the next round of elections. I think our voice and our message is starting to be heard, and it's starting to resonate a lot clearer.
Yeah. Let's talk about a race that has yet to be called, that is highly competitive right now. We're talking about the race for Harris County Judge.
Yes.
Ed Emmett, the incumbent here, facing opponent Lina Hidalgo. This race has been very close. Are you surprised by this, gentlemen?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm shocked because Ed Emmett is probably one of the Republicans that's known to reach across the aisle and is liked by both parties. There's a lot of Democrats. He has friends all over Houston and Harris County. And for the race to be this close for an incumbent who's liked by both sides, that's just a little shocking.
How do you explain this, do you think? Is it the down party voting?
That he was so far down on the ballot? Is it straight party ticket?
Or is it that we have a couple of young voters out here who said that Lina Hidalgo has been very active on social media? So I don't know.
I think a lot of Republicans are angry with Ed Emmett when he came out and said he was going to back the Democrat lieutenant governor candidate and not support Dan Patrick. I think that angered a lot of the base who said, you know what, I'm either not going to vote in that race or vote for his opponent for that sole fact.
Oh, wow.
So I think that really hurt him, came back to bite him tonight. And he might lose for it.
Yeah.
And Bun, you have been so involved with the community and flood cleanup. And I mean, you want to talk about the face of the flood and aftermath.
It was Ed Emmett.
It was Ed Emmett. So how are you feeling about this?
Well, I think he, like, you know, Governor Abbott is starting to feel that Harvey effect, right? The fact that they were very front and center during Harvey, very you know, giving a lot of information during the relief effort and really standing tall to try to rebuild this community. And I think that's reflecting in people who normally wouldn't vote for a person like Ed Emmett, seeing no reason to not vote for Ed Emmett, to be honest. And Hidalgo, I think her giving it such a close race has to do with the social media interaction. I think that people don't really give that enough credit in these elections, people being active with the voter base and with the young people, which is really the demographic that they need to get engaged in order to turn a state like Texas from red to blue. I think she did a great job of that, but Ed Emmett was front and center, and I think in the city of Houston, you know, next to the mayor, he was the most, you know, noticeable and most seen face, you know, standing, you know, right there on the front rounds, on the front lines during Harvey.
Certainly closer than we expected. As we said, it's dead even so far. That could change over the next hour or so. We watched O'Rourke and Cruz neck and neck. And then, you know, suddenly he's declared the winner. So we'll see. We'll see how this plays out.
But that's what's troubling also, because like Bun said, Ed Emmett was the face of the recovery efforts.
Harvey, yeah.
And you saw how, and like Greg Abbott, you know, everyone knew that Ed Emmett was there for the people. Why is this race this close?
You're saying it should be by a much larger margin, and that he should be leading the polls.
So you think
greatly.
Because he broke party lines that he's feeling
That's
the
what he
effects of that?
believes.
I really believe so, because people on both sides like Ed Emmett and know that he was there for everyone during Harvey, and I think he really angered the base.
What about straight party ticket voting, though? Do you think that's impacting Ed Emmett as well, too? People voting straight party Democrat instead and not realizing that, oh, Ed Emmett was a Republican, but I did think that he's done a good job in his role and his position as county judge.
Well, I think historically speaking, Democrats are much better at straight party voting than Republicans. Republicans tend to say, no, I want to go line by line, and you know, if I don't know you, I just won't vote. And for the most part, and that hurts races. Or if, you know, Ed Emmett broke party lines, he didn't support our lieutenant governor, I'm just not going to vote for him.
Murad Fiki and Bun B. Gentlemen, thank you for being here on what's been a really wild night. Thank you.
Still early.
Our coverage continues. Here's a look at more results in the races.
Welcome back to our coverage of the 2018 midterm elections.
We have breaking news. CBS News is projecting Republican Senator Ted Cruz will defeat Democratic rival Beto O'Rourke.
Here are the latest results with the numbers, with Cruz a narrow margin, 3 percentage points ahead of O'Rourke. This was a tight race from the beginning, ever since O'Rourke started to pick up steam earlier this year and getting so many dollars poured into his campaign. Analysts predicted that he would lose by maybe 5-10 points, but you see the narrow of loss is much closer.
Our crews are covering both candidates. Let's get right to Jason Miles live from the Cruz Watch Party. Jason.
It's getting increasingly harder to hear you guys with this crowd behind me. Hundreds of people celebrating right now. And every time a different news agency or outlet projects Ted Cruz as the winner, there's another round of cheers. And I think another news outlet just did that on the big monitor in the back of the room. All of these people came out tonight kind of nervous at the beginning, but as the night has progressed and as more results have come in, a lot more people have, gotten a lot more relaxed and a lot more celebratory, and it seems like the celebration will continue. Not the case out in El Paso, perhaps. That's where my colleague Marcelino Benito is covering the O'Rourke campaign. Marcelino?
Jason, the music is still playing at this watch party. They're now addressing the crowd. I don't think they've made it official here. No one's alerted people over the microphone about what's happened, but everyone's on their phones. I think they're starting to read that the race has been called by several news outlets. We do suspect that Beto O'Rourke will come out to address his supporters shortly. He engaged so many people in this process. It'll be interesting to see what he has to say tonight. We do expect him within the next 30 to 45 minutes. Guys, back to you.
A tough campaign, disappointing loss for Beto O'Rourke. Local results scrolling at the bottom of your screen tonight.
Our live webcast continues on KHOU.com and Facebook, and we will see you back here for KHOU 11 News at 10 on this special midterm election coverage night.
Give me a countdown.
I never understood how that thing works. It's like
Welcome back, everybody, for our KHOU webcast of the midterm election. I'm Ron Trevino, joined again by Bob Stein, our political analyst. And Bob, anything surprising you so far tonight?
You know, no. There's a local race I'll talk about in a moment here in the county, but if you get from the national perspective, most pollsters, most prognosticators are picking a pickup in the Senate of between, let's say, 1 to as many as maybe 5. It looks like the Republicans will pick up 3 seats, 2 to 3 seats. We don't know about Nevada, Arizona, western states.
Yeah.
Nationally, the Democrats were projected to get the House. It looks like they will get the House. The big question is, never as big as they thought they would get. And for the Republicans in the Senate, they were looking at a 10-seat pickup, possibly 10 seats where the Republican incumbent president had won that state, and there's a Democrat, of course, in the Senate. They're picking up 2, 3.
So tomorrow morning, who's going to be claiming victory? The
well,
Democrats
of course,
or Republicans?
Who knows what the Democrats or Republicans are going to say, but you know that the president will be the first tweeter of the day, and he will announce that he is victorious. Looks like he did very well in Florida, took the Senate seat and the gubernatorial seat, and held on to some key ones. His people in Missouri, Mr. Hawley beat McCaskill, and of course Heidenkamp lost in North Dakota. He didn't get Mr. Tester in Montana. Looks like he's going to win. Didn't get Manchin in West Virginia. But the president's notorious for talking about his wins, not his losses. Republicans, I think, are going to be looking at this election and wondering, how did they lose the House? And I think the answer is they lost the House largely because of Donald Trump.
But of course, then the big victory for Republicans, CBS is saying that Cruz is going to win.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a big victory. He won. And that's important. 3 months ago, nobody really thought that Beto O'Rourke was anywhere near 8 or 9 points, and he'll lose tonight by what looks like 2 points, well under the 5 points that I even thought. I thought 3 to 5 might be a margin that Beto would shoot for. Mr. O'Rourke ran a good campaign.
So he beat the spread.
He did better than beat the spread. I think he beat the spread, plus he beat the under and over. But what's really important here is why. When Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and most of the other candidates statewide for the Republican Party win by 8, 9, and 10 points, and Cruz can only win by 2, question mark, is Ted Cruz really the candidate the Republicans want in Texas? I can't believe that Ted Cruz did as poorly against Beto O'Rourke because Democrats turned out as much as Republicans didn't vote for Beto O'Rourke. Look at Fort Bend County. It went for Hillary Clinton in 2016. It went for Beto O'Rourke.
And what is next for Beto O'Rourke?
Well, that's for Beto O'Rourke to answer. I'm sure there are lots of people who are thinking president, but in 2020, another senator is up for re-election, John Cornyn, our own senior senator. He'll be 70. We presume he'll run for re-election, but that's in 2 years. Beto O'Rourke has proven he can run well against Ted Cruz. Real question is, how does he do against a more centrist candidate like John Cornyn?
Well, let's look at some more of these races up here. Lizzie Fletcher and John Culberson.
This is a bit of a surprise. Everyone called this a toss-up, and it was close, and I think it remains that way. We're looking at about a 4-point lead for Lizzie Fletcher. It's a little bit early. We've got a lot more precincts, so we really have election day numbers. I'm predicting Fletcher wins this race by 1 or 2 points, mostly because of what we got in early voting. That'll hold up for election day.
What did Mr. Culberson do wrong?
I suspect there were 2 things that Culberson did wrong. One, he didn't really, how should I say, connect with the district until very late. That's number 1. Number 2, I think Fletcher capitalized on something in that district that we saw when we were doing some polling after Harvey, and that was a large number of women who were not only concerned about the president and the party brand, but also greatly concerned about their future in terms of issues like health care.
But like you said, it's still early. That's just 10% reporting.
Well, let me explain something here. This is 10% of the precincts completely reporting. This is the early vote. On election day, they will report another 200 to 300,000 votes. But most of the votes, you're looking at 75% right here. My suspicions are that the early vote will pretty much track with the election day vote. That number might vary a little bit for Mr. Culberson, but I'm going to go so far as to say at this point, this race probably has been decided Fletcher by 2 to 3 points.
All right, let's move on to the Harris County judge, Ed Emmett.
This is a race that I think nobody saw coming. I've been saying this for a while. I know some of my colleagues have pointed out Democrats in Harris County vote straight ticket, Republicans split. For Emmett to win in what is now a Democratic county. We've been Democratic since 2008. Smaller margins in 2008, but they've grown. The problem with Ed Emmett was not it was anything wrong with him. It's a great irony here. This is probably, arguably, the most popular elected official in Harris County, and probably in 2 or 3 counties.
And demonstrated a lot of leadership through our floods and our hurricanes.
Which is why he's well-deserved reputation. And after Hurricane Harvey and an incredibly successful bond election, which he himself was worried about, Ed Emmett should have breezed to re-election. But these are different times. These are partisan polarization, and Emmett is suffering from that. Democrats who normally cross over. For Ed Emmett, in 2008, he won almost 40% of Democratic vote. Lina Hidalgo, a wonderful, I'm sure, up-and-coming Democrat, but most Democrats could not name her, could not tell you who the Democratic candidate was. Why is she so close? It's simply because people are voting straight ticket on the Democratic side.
And it's still very early. It's a very, very tight race.
Again, the thing you got to remember here is that you're looking at 75% of the vote cast, probably, no less than 70. That means on Election Day, that's the only number that we're missing here. What you're going to start seeing in Harris County is probably the same split here. I'm going to guess, but it's a toss of a coin that Emmett wins by the slightest 10,000 votes, but I'm not necessarily betting on that.
All right, as they say, stay tuned, okay? Oh, there we go. Proposition B in Houston. Help me with this.
Proposition B, of course, was to keep Rebuild Houston. You remember in 2010, we had a vote. We wanted to dedicate money to a lockbox just for drainage, just for flood control. That was almost, 10 years ago. In that time, a lot of voters have complained they didn't know what they were voting for on the bond, on the ballot, and had complained that council passed a drainage fee. They didn't think the two were connected, and the drainage fee was extremely unpopular. Prop B, when it was voted on in 2008, barely passed by 4,000 votes. A group of citizens led by a lawyer named Andy Taylor did an excellent job and were able to say, you know what? The wording was misleading, and you've got to put it back on the ballot. And it's on the ballot, Prop A.
And it looks like it's going to win. And again, this is a...
You got B here. Let's look at A. Yeah. It's winning by 75-26. So we're going to keep the drainage. Why did it win? Mostly because we voted 80% to 20% for the county's bond. I think people, when they read the caption, like it. It's B that's an interesting one.
And this gives firefighters a raise?
Well, it doesn't give them a raise. What it says is that the city should provide parity in the pay of firemen to policemen. Of course, it doesn't say what parity is, although the caption on the ballot was very long and said, if you're a captain in the police department and you're a captain in the fire department, essentially doing the same activities, you should be, of course, getting equity. This is a subject of a lot more negotiation. The 58%, I had thought this was at 62. It dropped a little bit with some opposition from the mayor, but that's a healthy margin of about 16 points. It'll be interesting to see how the mayor and council, now they have to negotiate. They have to come to some agreement on parity, and they have to do it before the election 1 year from today.
And if I may, it looked like the firefighters did a good job of campaigning because the signs were everywhere. They were, near the polling locations.
Well, they had two things going for them. One, they had the respect and loyalty of a public that was well served by firefighters during Hurricane Harvey. To say nothing about men and women who put their lives on the line, mostly to fight heart attacks and medical emergencies rather than fires. The mayor was, as said as he did tonight, there's no money. The firemen say there is money. We'll see who's right when they negotiate this, but this is not going to be settled tomorrow.
Okay, all right. On to the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, there with 55% of the vote. No shock there to you?
No, this is an odd race here. Look at the governor's race, 55-43. Look at the lieutenant governor's race, 51-47. Look at the attorney general's race, 51-47. And again, Sid Miller, our controversial, somewhat outspoken ag commissioner. So the margins for the governor are a little bit better. But as I said before, these are margins much greater than what you see for the Senate race. This is a 2-point lead. These margins are anywhere between 16 points and for the governor and lieutenant governor, as many as 7 or 8. So the Republicans did very well, as you might expect, but you're beginning to see some evidence that when Democrats put up credible candidates, they can run well. And Beto probably had some long coattails down to some of these other candidates like Mike Collier, Justin Nelson, and Kim Olson, candidates that really didn't run much of a campaign as Democrats.
Do you see kind of a blue tide?
I think it's kind of
any kind of trend.
I think you see two things. You see a demographic change in the electorate, a lot younger voters showing up and voting. We can't presume that those younger voters are Democratic voters. I think what we can presume is that they're voters who are discerning. That means they'll split their ticket. That means they'll look at the candidates. It means that a Beto O'Rourke can get their support, but so can Governor Abbott. If the Democrats can put up candidates like Beto O'Rourke, and I'm not attacking Lupe Valdez, but there's a big difference between those two candidates and how well they did. O'Rourke is a candidate that can inspire what I call the right side of the demography, which is new voters coming into the electorate. As older voters leave, people like Dan Patrick, Ken Paxton are not going to be able to find those kinds of voters that support them in the past.
Well, let me ask you this. When do you see Texas becoming blue?
I think the key one here is whether or not the Democrats can do well enough to encourage quality candidates to run for state legislative offices. They're the offices that redraw the districts. I don't believe the Democrats can take the House, State House, Texas House in the near term, but if they can begin to recruit good candidates. And how do they do that? They find candidates that ran countywide who've won. Tonight, with the exception of Ed Emmett, every countywide Democrat, judge, treasurer, clerk, and of course, county judge, are winning or have won already. Democrats now have some really good office holders who they can now recruit for higher offices.
And what about the changing demographics of Texas?
Well, the demographics speak for themselves. Tonight, one of the Republican Party leaders here in Harris County commented that we are a diverse state. We're a non-majority white state. If we're not a non-majority white electorate, people who vote tend to be white. But if tonight's any indication of it, when we see the final exit polls, we're going to see younger and a higher proportion of non-Anglo voters.
All right, what other races do you want to look at here? See if I can pop them up.
Well, I'd look at the Pete Olson race, and I would look at the Litton and Crenshaw race. That would be the 22nd and the 7th. Excuse me, the 2nd. Dan Crenshaw, who is a surprise Republican nominee, he beat out of two-term state representative, Representative Roberts. He was a surprise winner in that runoff, and he's doing handily against Crenshaw. He was also the subject of some ridicule on a Saturday Night Live ad, which made fun of his eye patch.
But as somebody who studies politics like you, that probably helped him?
It sure didn't hurt him.
It sure didn't hurt.
My sense is it added an element of outrage, if not moving Litton supporters to Crenshaw, maybe motivating
giving
a few
him
more
more
Crenshaw.
sympathy.
Yeah. But again, this is the early vote, so that unfortunate remark.
This all happened before Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, it happened well before Saturday Night Live. But I think what you're seeing here is Crenshaw is the kind of Republican that probably can win. He's not an incumbent. He was, of course, along with a bunch of other candidates, fresh candidates, because, of course, Ted Poe retired. But see the contrast here. Litton is trailing almost by 8 points here, but of course Fletcher winning by right now 4. So I think what you're seeing is the difference in the quality of the campaign. Litton was not a weak candidate, just didn't have the kind of resources and money that Fletcher did. Kevin Brady, of course, a former chairman of House Ways and Means Committee, doing very nicely up in the Woodlands. Al Green, no big surprise here. One of the things that surprises me here is what is going on with McCall. Now, these are early numbers, but McCall should be winning handily in this district. I suspect that number will grow when the evening gets on, but it's still a bit of a surprise. We don't have the race here, but here's Pete Olson. Olson is at least a 5-term incumbent. He had a stroke in the middle of the campaign, was unable to campaign. Kulkarni is coming on. This is, I think, portends well for the fall of 2020. These guys might see each other again in another race. Remains to be seen in a presidential election whether or not Olson can hold on to this seat. Sylvia Garcia did very nicely. We don't have the Pete Sessions race here. He, of course, is from the Dallas-Corsicana area, but Sessions was trailing Mr. Allard, a former NFL. Let's see if we can get that's a 30-state rep, U.S. rep. I guess that's all the rep races we've got.
District judges, Harris County races.
Look at the Harris County races for commissioners. Let's see if we can get. I don't think we're going to get it. We have to really go down deep. There was an interesting race for Commissioner 2. That, of course, was Adrian Garcia, the challenger, and Jack Mormon, and we're going to have to go down.
It might be in here.
These are all the judges' races. There we go. Jack Mormon and Adrian Garcia. Of course, Jack Mormon took the seat away from Sylvia Garcia, who got elected to the House of Representatives tonight in 2010. And this is a close race, about 4,000 votes. I'm betting Mormon will hold on. Had Mormon lost, Garcia got elected. Ms. Hidalgo beats of course, Ed Emmett and the entire commissioner's court goes from a majority Republican to a majority Democrat. Looks like Mormon will hold on here, but again, we'll look at the election day vote. But as I've said, this is about 75% of the vote, and I think Mormon's headed to being reelected.
Well, but you look at Garcia and Lizzie Fletcher and nationwide, seems like a lot of women are being elected.
Well, there were, Lizzie Fletcher's a good example of that, of course. Sylvia Garcia will be the first Latina elected to the House of Representatives from our district. Jack Cagle is doing very nicely. I don't think he had ever had any question. But look at the county clerk race. Stan Stannard's running our election. And what you were getting to see now is how the Democrats have such a stronghold county-wide. With the exception of Ed Emmett, there isn't a single county-wide Republican that will win tonight. You're going to see Stannard incumbent being defeated. Emmett and Hidalgo are in a hard race to the end. And of course, I think you'll see, I don't see the county treasurer on here, but Orlando Sanchez, nope, I don't see it, because it should.
Maybe if we just scroll high enough.
Yeah, I think we're in the, oh, I take it back. Chris Daniels is losing to Burgess. Chris Daniels, of course, was the incumbent Republican county clerk, and I'm looking for the county treasurer.
Now, as I scroll, I mean, voting straight ticket has always been a thing, but
there it is.
Was it more of a thing this time around?
I think for Democrats, something, of course, the Republicans in the legislature passed a law in 2020 will no longer vote straight ticket. One of the concerns that Republicans had was that their voters, Democratic voters, were straight ticket voters, and making it harder for them to do that, they might not go down ballot. The problem here is wanting to vote straight ticket and having an incentive because you can hit one button are two different things. I think what you see with Republicans is that they do really want to split their ticket, and there's not much that's going to impede them. And you saw this today with the vote for Ted Cruz. But in Harris County, this completes what I call the formal shift from Republican to Democratic county majority. Democrats now in 2 consecutive presidential, high turnout, midterm should have been a low turnout, but was a high turnout. I think in Harris County, the Democrats can feel pretty good.
And Orlando Sanchez, high-profile name in politics
Orlando had been
for a long time
for
in various
years,
offices.
And was a city council member.
Ran for mayor.
Yes, ran for mayor and almost beat Lee Brown. But again, it's not Orlando Sanchez or Ed Emmett or, for that matter, Stan Stannard that's running. Nobody ever got to see their names. Most voters.
It's nothing personal. You're in the wrong party.
You're in the wrong party. And I think that the personal of that was Ed Emmett. Because if you query Democratic voters in surveys, they'll tell you, oh, I'm voting for Ed. But they didn't. And either because they didn't know how to or couldn't or didn't want to deviate from the party. But they never got down to that 6th page. And this race, maybe when we go home tonight, we'll get a better picture of where Emmett is with Miss Hidalgo.
Now, you know, another thing that happened today was they had to extend the hours of voting in a few places because of some problems. Some voting polls places were not open at 7 a.m. But you told me earlier that's not uncommon.
No, you go from, so many of us vote early, 75%, that we don't think about what happens on election day. Stan and whoever will now, Ms. Troutman, be running elections, will, in a midterm election, put up maybe 600 polling places. 600 polling places have to have a number of polling judges, a number of security, machines, and people there at 7 in the morning. It's like opening up a school. There will be kids who come late to school.
And you're saying a lot of them aren't volunteers, but they're being paid like volunteers.
Well, they're not. Trust me, you don't make a living doing this. It's an act of love, and many of the people who staff and operate our early voting places are, how can I put this, professionals, party activists, and Stan, I'm sure, trains these and takes the best people he's got. But when you start having a polling place in somebody's garage on the east side, west side, that person may not necessarily wake up in time, may not be able to plug into the wall. There was a problem this morning with the server on the e-poll book when you check in. The fact that there are only 9 precincts out of 500, I think it's extraordinary.
Yeah, but not to be whatever, but doesn't it seem, I mean, it's 2018. It seems like the system should be a little bit more streamlined, or it's...
You're only as good as the community and neighborhood and facilities. You've got to get neighborhood.
What's the future of voting?
I think personally that you'll start seeing what California just adopted and Oregon has been doing for 25 years, in Colorado and Washington, and that's vote by mail. In those states, everybody's mailed a ballot.
Pros and cons of voting by mail.
The pros, it saves a fortune. It increases voter turnout. It leads to much higher rates of ballot completion. If you're worried about the straight ticket voting or people not knowing, you can't take a phone or even a cheat sheet in other than on a piece of paper. But when you get a ballot in the mail, it's like a take-home exam. You can sit, talk to your spouse, talk to your friends, go online.
You can Google it to your heart's content.
And you will. And we find in these states that do have mail vote by mail, they complete the ballot. The only downside I've ever heard of is the possibility of voter coercion. You don't walk into a voting booth.
Your spouse saying.
Your spouse can yell at you and say, Ron, you've got to vote this way or that.
My
or
spouse
worse,
never yells at me.
Well, I'm sure she doesn't.
Well,
you're a wonderful
It's very
husband.
early in the marriage.
But I think the other problem, and nobody knows the extent of it, and many who advocate for this say it's a trivial issue, but it may be that an employer calls you up and says, Ron, could you bring your ballot down? I want you to fill it out with me. And that kind of coercion may never get reported. But I think to a large
But
extent.
some of these other states, they haven't really had a lot of problems with mailing ballots.
No. Colorado, Washington, and Oregon have had tremendous success. Everybody loves it, and the turnout rates and ballot completion rates are high. And one of the things that's not inconsequential is the cost of running elections. I've heard several county commissioners
These machines are expensive.
Well, all our machines about 12 years ago got caught in a fire and burnt. And Beverly Kaufman.
I remember that.
And Beverly,
yes.
who wisely had insured them, got the Hart Civic machine rebuilt. But I'm not criticizing Hart Civic, but it's an old technology. And probably, as we found out, can sometimes freeze when you hit straight ticket and try to override it.
All right, well, sometimes this thing freezes. All right, what other races do you think you'd want to look at right now?
Let's go look at Brazoria. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Brazoria County's, oops.
What'd I tell you about it freezing up? All right. Brazoria County.
I don't know if we have the governor's race here. This is a Republican county.
Probably not now.
And do we have Fort Bend on here?
I think we do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there it is.
Look at Fort Bend. And again, I don't know if we have the governor's race. We got a lot
I think
of.
these are just going to be the local races.
It's
there.
unfortunate because Fort Bend went for Beto by about the same margin as Harris. Or the better way to put it is you now got 2 of the 4, maybe 3 of the 4 big counties trending Democratic. Harris County, Fort Bend. Look at the Fort Bend D. Can we find the district attorney's race by any chance?
Which I believe
I
is
think
going to be the
can-
hottest race in Fort Bend County.
I thought that one was going to tell us a lot about where Fort Bend's going. I know it's all these muds.
A lot of muds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nope.
All right.
But I think Fort Bend is another county that we've not been paying attention to. The Asian non-Anglo population voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, and the Beto O'Rourke race, I think, tells you. There it is. And we have nothing here. Mr. Vasic and Mr. Middleton. Middleton is an African-American assistant district attorney, and of course, Mr. Vasic is older white who just got his law degree. If you read the qualifications of these candidates, you'd say they're virtually identical. Except
we don't have any numbers.
We have no numbers
They
yet.
look pretty identical right here, right now.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So as we wrap this up, I mean, what do you think the big conversation is going to be tomorrow morning?
I don't know. I think the conversation is going to be whatever the president tweets first in the morning. The Democrats will have the House, probably. Republicans will still hold on to the Senate. And that's pretty much what we expected. Here locally, I think there'll be, of course, the Ed Emmett race. I'm assuming Ed will hold on and win by a very small margin. I think the Ted Cruz victory will be a bittersweet victory for him. A win is a win, and I think the Fletcher race will also catch some national attention, not only because it flipped a seat. We'll also have to see what happens to Congressman Sessions up in Dallas, but because this is a woman, and this makes a big difference. This may, again, I think when someone like Lizzie Fletcher wins, first-time candidate, went through a very tough primary race. Nobody really thought this was a winnable seat. I never thought it was a winnable seat until she proved it. I think this will start attracting not only other quality candidates, but quality women candidates.
And we talked about Beto O'Rourke, and CBS is projecting that he's going to lose.
Yeah.
What about, we talked about his possible scenarios for his future, but what about the base that he ignited?
Well, I think that's a real question. I think every Democrat in the state's going to want to sit down and figure out what happened. Beto O'Rourke, of course, his explanation is I did what I wanted to do. I was my own man. I went to all 254 counties. I didn't have any reluctance to talk about impeaching the president or reluctance about abandoning ICE or the border wall. These are issues that, of course, Ted Cruz slammed him on, and one might argue he did well on because he won the election, but not by very much, and nowhere near what other Republicans. So it may be that we need to look more carefully about where Beto O'Rourke's vote came from. One thing we do know, he not only energized, but registered and brought out a whole large number of voters well under the age of 40 or 35, and those voters are not going away. Someone's going to want to capitalize on it. And we don't know who that Democrat's going to be. Of course, it could be Beto O'Rourke, it could be the Castro brothers, but the list of Democratic statewide candidates is not very deep. And when you look at Collier or Lupe Valdez, these are not, I don't mean to be critical, but they're not the future of the party. Beto O'Rourke is, the Castro brothers are, Lizzie Fletcher is, there may be more like Mr. Litton, who didn't run as well as Lizzie Fletcher, but I wouldn't rule out in 2020 and 2022 when they redistrict these congressional seats, you won't see more of these Republicans.
And what does this midterm do in terms of the two parties trying to work together?
I see no evidence of that.
You see no evidence.
I fear that the Republican House members are just as, I think they're pressing it when they talk about what the Democrats will do with their now power of subpoena and oversight committees. And I fear they may go after, try to impeach the president. If I were a Democratic consultant, I'd say that is the most ill-conceived idea. Try to govern for a change, but this is, the Ed Emmett story to me is the one. If Ed loses this race, if Ed Emmett is not reelected, that'll be not only the oddest and most ironic, but probably from the point of view of good government, a tragic outcome. I'm not saying Lina Hidalgo is not a qualified candidate, but we're in the middle of a major rebuilding and protection and resilience on hurricanes. Ed led the county in that. He's 69, 68 years old. I wanted him to, I think many people wanted him to finish it. I'm not trying to be partisan, I'm trying to be nonpartisan.
But you see him.
But he's a victim of this type of polarization.
He's a victim of the polarization and the straight ticket.
And I think, you know, a lot of Republicans probably look at Ed Emmett in the Cruz camp and wonder if he's in the right party.
And nationally, though, the Democrats taking the House, but not the Senate.
Yeah, again, that was pretty much what we expected to see. It was a widespread prediction. We don't know what that number of seats are. I think at one point it was predictions were as high as 37. I think it'll be above the 23, 24 that are needed, but well below that 37, probably about 32, 35. What'll be more interesting, I think, are some of the other gubernatorial races. Ohio becomes very important. Why? Because it's a redistricting state, and it's where the governor could prevent.
We got to wrap it up online, digitally, but you'll be on KHOU 11 News at 10. I'm Ron Trevino. Thank you so much for watching. Go to KHOU 11 News now.
America's never been more divided, never been more polarized.
If you are fed up with the anger, with the bitterness, with the hatred, with the rage, then come together as Texans.
This is the most important election in my lifetime, and it's not because I'm on the ballot. I'm on the ballot because it's the most important election of our lifetime.
Many elections come down to just a handful of votes. Every vote's going to count in this election.
America's never been more divided, never been more polarized.
If you are fed up with the anger, with the bitterness, with the hatred, with the rage, then come together as Texans.
This is the most important election in my lifetime, and it's not because I'm on the ballot. I'm on the ballot because it's the most important election of our lifetime.
Many elections come down to just a handful of votes. Every vote's going to count in this election.
We don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent. All we care is that you're here and that you can work together, not against anyone, but for a better, stronger future for this country.
That is Texas. We defend freedom. We defend the Constitution. And we defend the United States of America.
A historic night in the elections and the race we were watching most in Texas. It was a close one. Good evening. I'm Len Cannon.
And I am Mia Grady. The entire nation is watching the results in Texas, which are still coming in. And we have crews all over the state with live team coverage of the big races.
Yeah, the sizzler, the hottest race on the ticket. Republican Senator Ted Cruz and a Democratic challenger, Congressman Beto O'Rourke. This one was tight from the moment the first numbers trickled in. But Ted Cruz is going back to Washington, squeaking by 3 percentage points, declared the winner by CBS tonight, 51 to 48%.
With that said, let's kick things off with Jason Miles at Cruz's watch party in the Galleria. Jason.
Yeah, a major party here tonight, folks. Radio talk show host Michael Berry is at the podium right now, but we expect Senator Ted Cruz to take that stage in the next few minutes. Standing in front of that big Texas flag and celebrating victory tonight over challenger Beto O'Rourke after obviously a very closely watched, heated campaign over the last few months. This crowd a little earlier was quite nervous, looking at some of the early returns. Tonight progressed as CBS News projected Ted Cruz the winner, as other media outlets did the same. You heard loud cheering as the different outlets announced this result, and I think we're getting close to the moment where Ted Cruz enters the room. We have arrived at that moment, and you should be looking at another camera shot of this room. I wouldn't dare to guess how many hundreds are here, but over the last hour or so, the crowd has gotten exponentially bigger. And here is Ted Cruz, preceded by his wife. I don't see his children at this point. Yes, I see the daughters there with him. You can imagine that Ted Cruz is very happy tonight. He'll be going back to the U.S. Senate for another 6-year term after defeating Beto O'Rourke. Let's listen in. I just saw him grab the microphone. Let's hear Senator Cruz on this election win.
God bless Texas. Tonight is a victory for the people of Texas. Tonight is a victory for all the men and women in this room and all the men and women across this state that poured your hearts, your passion, your time, your energy to rising to defend Texas. To every one of you, Heidi and I and the girls, we say thank you. Thank you. Texas saw something this year that we've never seen before. This election wasn't about me, and it wasn't about Beto O'Rourke. This election was a battle of ideas. It was a contest for who we are and what we believe. It was a contest, and the people of Texas decided this race. We traveled every part of the state, from East Texas to West Texas, from the Panhandle to the Valley. And the energy, the excitement we saw was incredible. Just a couple of weeks ago down in the Valley, in Harlingen, 2,000 people coming out. In Mission, 2,000 people coming out. In El Paso, 2,000 people coming out. And what was truly amazing, at many of these events, we would ask, how many of you here are former Democrats? And we would see hands throughout the room, as we're seeing hands now, because Texas came together behind a common sense agenda of low taxes, low regulations, and lots of jobs. Securing the border and keeping our communities safe, and defending the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And that is a common sense agenda that unites Texans from every part of the state, It was your hard work. This is a victory for the single mom who's been waiting tables, who suddenly sees her wages going up because the economy is booming. This is a victory for the oil field worker who sees now that the United States is the world's top producer of oil. This is a victory for all the kids who are seeing their parents. In the last 2 years, 4 million people have come off of food stamps. Stop and reflect for a moment the lives transformed. People who had been dependent on government for basic food needs now have jobs and get to come home carrying a bag of groceries. Get to come home and look at their kids and say, I'm providing for my family, and their kids get to look up at mom, look up at dad, and see the hope. This was an election about hope and about the future, and the people of Texas rendered a verdict that we want a future with more jobs and more security and more freedom. I want to take a moment also to thank my wife, Heidi, who is my best friend in the world and who, in the course of this campaign, shouldered responsibilities at work, at home, juggling 1,000 balls backwards on a unicycle.
Senator Ted Cruz winning tonight, going back to Washington. The incumbent senator, native Houstonian, talking to his wife there and his girls, 2 young daughters standing next to him tonight in the Galleria area.
Yeah, saying a victory for the people of Texas who rose to defend Texas. And now to Beto O'Rourke, considered the underdog from the beginning, who gave Cruz a run for his money but just came up short.
Yeah, about 3 percentage points. Marcelino Benito is in El Paso tonight, Rourke's hometown. Marcelino, folks, got to be sad tonight.
Guys, the music is still playing here, but I can tell you folks are not happy. They're disappointed. This is not the outcome any of the thousands of people that turned out to this ballpark tonight expected. The O'Rourke campaign always had an uphill battle. It had the energy, it had the fervor, it had some momentum behind the candidate, but they needed to turn that energy and enthusiasm into votes. And although they did with a strong early voting turnout performance, they weren't able to do it on Election Day. I just spoke a few minutes ago to some campaign surrogates of the O'Rourke campaign. They say they're obviously disappointed in tonight's results. It's not the outcome they wanted. It's not the outcome they truly believed would turn out tonight. But they say it is a positive sign that Texas is moving closer to being blue. They say what Beto O'Rourke was able to do in terms of stirring up enthusiasm with young voters is something that will propel Texas closer to that blue wave that they hope to see in a few years. We're still waiting on the candidate to come out and speak to his supporters. None of these people, the thousands that have gathered, are going to leave this auditorium until they hear from him. One more thing to mention, they kept repeating and chanting in the crowd, Beto for president, Beto for president. So this is likely not the last time we've heard of Beto O'Rourke in politics. Guys, back to you.
All right, Marcelino Benito out in El Paso tonight as we wait to hear from Beto O'Rourke, losing the Senate race. The District 7 congressional race pitting Republican incumbent John Culberson against Democrat Lizzie Fletcher. Culberson has held that seat for 17 years and looks like Fletcher may pull off an upset tonight. She's up by just 3 percentage points, and we're still waiting for all the numbers to come in. A close one, but Fletcher leading right now.
We are live with both candidates. Let's begin with Sherman Chow, north of Rice Village, with Fletcher. Sherman?
Yeah, I tell you what, you can see behind me a packed house, and we think we will see the candidate in about 10 minutes. I'm sure she is eyeing those returns, as are the folks here. They are also keeping an eye on those national races. You'll hear periodic cheers go up when they see a Democrat leading in a race outside of Texas. You could feel Fletcher's confidence today. She felt like the polls did not accurately account for support from millennials, younger people, because they typically survey likely voters, which means first-time voters, infrequent voters may not have been included. Now, among her very young supporters is this teenager who's been volunteering 2 to 3 times a week since November. The young lady attends Fletcher's alma mater, St. John's.
It's the most important election I can remember in my lifetime, and it's not just because I'm on the ballot. It's the reason I'm on the ballot, and I think that people across our community feel that way, and I think we're going to see record numbers.
She feels like Fletcher's support of Planned Parenthood and pro-choice position particularly resonated with this 16-year-old. She'll be able to vote in 2 more years. Healthcare and flood control projects, probably the two largest issues for Fletcher in this campaign. We expect to see her in about 10 more minutes. The crowd here keeping an eye on those national races. Fair enough, I suppose, since the nation is also watching this race in the 7th Congressional District. Back to y'all.
Still waiting for that race to come to an end. Sherman, thank you. Let's check in with Larry Seward tonight.
He is in West Houston with Culberson's camp. Larry?
Yeah, John Culberson worked this room, and if he looks nervous, you really can't tell. We were with John yesterday, we were with him earlier today, and the representative still smiling, still excited, still confident, talking with his supporters here. And behind me, I don't know if you can still see, they cut the cake a short time ago. People are having cake here and still having a good time here at the watch party. Culberson telling us earlier that he believes the people of District 7 respect what he's done. They know what he's done to make lives better here in West Houston. Not just West Houston, but District 7. We're talking areas from West University to Barker Cypress and 290 out to Katy. He believes the 17 years of work in Congress, his appointment to the House Appropriations Committee to be able to get funding quickly after Hurricane Harvey to this area is something that voters told him got them to the polls. He saw, in his mind, heavy turnout in Republican strongholds. But again, the results right now not necessarily bearing that out, but his campaign certainly remains confident at this point. Lynn, Mia, back to you.
All right, Larry Seward there with Culberson's camp. Thank you, Larry. We'll continue to watch this race. As you know, if you voted, this ballot was a long one.
Sure was. So here's a quick look at some of the other top races, starting with the race for Harris County Judge. Ed Emmett, in office since 2007. A challenge by political newcomer Lena Hidalgo, hoping to become the first woman and Latina judge in Harris County. You can see the numbers right there, 64% of the precincts reporting dead even. There are also 2 propositions on the ballot in Houston. First, Prop A, which ensures a fee collected through our water bills will go to rebuild Houston, a city program for drainage and street repairs, very important after the hurricane. And you can see overwhelming victory so far for Prop A.
But the more controversial of the 2 propositions is Prop B. This would give Houston firefighters a nearly 30% raise to bring their salaries to the same level as Houston police officers. Very controversial here with the mayor, Mayor Turner, but it looks like 59% have voted for Proposition B. Now, as mentioned, Mayor Sylvester Turner and the Firefighters Union have been at odds over this for years. The union says their salaries have only been raised by 3% since 2011, while HPD has gotten more than 30% in that same time. The mayor, visibly disappointed tonight, says the city simply cannot afford what the firefighters are demanding.
It does add an additional $100 million to the city's bottom line. And it is just on pay raises. Not on the fire trucks, not on the boots, the clothing, the equipment, just on pay raises.
We want to work not only with the citizens we serve, but we want to pave a brighter future, the best future possible for all of our brave Houston firefighters.
While the firefighters are happy about Prop B passing, Mayor Turner says it could lead to layoffs and budget cuts across the city.
We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Now for a closer look at the bumpy start to Election Day. Let's show you from Air 11 some of the long lines out there at some of the busiest polling places, and some early morning delays at several locations actually led to a last-minute lawsuit to keep them open an extra hour in Harris County tonight.
Grace White joins us now. Grace, how often does something like this happen?
It certainly happened in the Houston area before, but not often. In fact, we checked court records and didn't find any other lawsuits in recent years in Harris County. Here's what happened today, though. 9 polling sites didn't open on time, one as late as 8:15 this morning. A lawsuit was filed by the Texas Civil Rights Project, and a judge granted their request. Here's a look at the map. You can see the 9 polls impacted are scattered across the Houston area. These locations stayed open until 8 o'clock tonight. And this is one of those sites, Marshall Middle School, just north of downtown. We met people there who had to leave before they were able to vote this morning, but came back tonight.
We just want to make sure that everybody is allowed to go in, vote for whoever they want to vote for, without having to go through too much hassle and too much grief and be dissuaded.
An attorney for the Texas Civil Rights Project called this a win for voters. Their goal to make sure everyone who wanted to cast their ballots could. It's interesting to note it was complaints that came into a voter hotline that got this whole thing started. Len and Mia, back to you.
Got to make your voices heard, whether you're upset or you're happy. Let's take a look at the Texas governor's race now. Former Dallas County Sheriff Lupe Valdez, there on the left, tried to unseat Governor Greg Abbott.
But Abbott won with a comfortable lead. Here's a look at the results. 56% of Texans voted for Greg Abbott, while just 42% voted for Valdez. Those are just some of the top races we're watching, but you can watch all the race results. Scroll across the bottom of your screen throughout the newscast.
And we have much more ahead, including a shift in power in Washington. We take a closer look at the battle for control of the Senate and the House.
And tensions boil over at a local polling place. An assistant election judge accused of going on a racist rant against a voter.
Near record heat today gives way to wind and rain and much colder temperatures before this week is over. We'll roll with the changes together right after the break.
Toughest one to manage is your card. How to buy more groceries for less. Wednesday on KHOU 11 News at 10.
This portion of the news is brought to you by ABC Home and Commercial Services.
'Tis the season for sibling rivalry, and these siblings have been very good. Choose your favorite Cadillac SUV during our season's best winter sales event. Get this low mileage lease on this 2019 Cadillac XT5 from around $399 per month. These offers end soon.
What is Gallery Furniture all about? Gallery Furniture is all about delighting customers today. No frustrating back order slip. Buying a room full of furniture, a house full of furniture, a Tempur-Pedic sleep set. Gallery Furniture delivers to your home in 3 or 4 hours and saves you money today.
Anyone can deliver a box. But when you consider the source, no matter how you get your groceries, only Kroger can bring you the fresh, delicious food and quality products you already know and love. So check out while you're chilling. Shop online today.
To the first teacher who took me seriously.
To the professor who pulled me aside and said, "You got this."
To the pilots who let me in the cockpit but didn't let me touch anything.
To Grace Hopper.
To Mae Jemison.
To Miss Frizzle. What?
To Mrs. Schwenke.
To my aunt. I mean, Mama.
To whoever comes after me.
Let me help show you the way.
When more girls go into STEM, the whole world benefits.
Thank the role model who inspired you.
Thank you.
Gracias, Mama.
Create your own thank you at thankyourrolemodel.com.
Whether you're looking for modern furniture with vintage appeal, hand-selected solid wood furniture made in America, or top quality 100% leather furniture, find your inspiration today at all 3 Gallery Furniture locations.
Welcome back. We have a look at even more big statewide races tonight.
Let's start with Texas's 2nd Congressional District, which curves from West Houston around to Kingwood. This is the seat currently held by the outgoing Republican Congressman Ted Poe. Republican Dan Crenshaw holding a steady lead over his Democratic opponent, Todd Litton.
I'm Stephanie Whitfield at the Houstonian Hotel, where Dan Crenshaw and his supporters are celebrating a comfortable lead. Now, a victory for the retired Navy SEAL comes as no surprise. He's wanting to replace longtime Republican incumbent Ted Poe, who's retiring. Now, Dan Crenshaw's dad has been updating this crowd all night, telling them they're at the right party. Guys, back to you.
In the state's 29th Congressional District, Democratic State Senator Sylvia Garcia is going to Washington, elected overwhelmingly tonight. Look at those numbers, taking the place of outgoing Democratic Congressman Gene Green.
I'm Janelle Bluda. Congresswoman-elect Sylvia Garcia's watch party. As you can see, lots of excitement here tonight. The theme of the night is making history, as Garcia will now be one of Texas's first Latina congresswomen elected to office, and her first day on the job is January 3rd. Guys?
And the race for Lieutenant Governor is going in favor of the Republican incumbent, Dan Patrick. He holds a sizable lead over Democratic challenger Mike Collier.
And here's the latest on the race for Texas Attorney General. Republican Ken Paxton ahead of the challenger attorney Justin Nelson. Paxton, who, by the way, faces federal securities fraud charges. That's a case that has not even gone to trial. He was charged 3 years ago, but he's ahead in the polls tonight.
There is a lot at stake tonight to regain control of the House. Democrats needed to flip 23 seats, but the Republicans are holding on to the Senate. And across the nation, there were 36 races for governor.
Reka keeping an eye on the balance of power in the nation's capital tonight. Reka?
Hey, guys. Well, first, midterm elections, we should say, and have been saying all night, are typically a reflection of what voters think of the president. So our poll question tonight is, did President Trump play a role in your decision to vote this midterm election? Most of you saying yes right now, but you can go to khou.com/vote now to make your pick. Okay, back to Congress. The Senate races are swinging the predicted direction here. It looks as if Republicans will retain their majority in the Senate, but Democrats seem to be gaining enough seats in those red districts to take control of the House. Now, even though Republicans have more races called in their favor right now, as we've said, Democrats need to flip 23 seats to take over. All right, Democrats have gained at least 10 of those seats needed to take the House, and here are some of the wins so far. Let's talk about Florida first. Democrat Donna Shalala, a former member of President Clinton's cabinet, has secured a seat that has long been held by a Republican. In Kansas's 3rd district, we're looking at this now, Democrat Sharice Davis, an attorney, has been elected as the state's first Native American and first lesbian congresswoman. Now, we are still waiting on several key races, some that are very much undecided. There's a big opportunity for Democrats in California's 49th district. The president has endorsed Diane Harkey. Former President Obama has endorsed Mike Levin, an environmental lawyer. So we're waiting to hear on that. That could actually take days or weeks. California could decide many of these House elections. In the meantime, Minnesota's 8th district may flip for Republicans. Pete Sauber, a retired police officer, heavily favored over his Democratic opponent, Joe Radinovich. And now, of course, one of the most watched races here that we've been watching all night right here in Houston. CBS now projecting Lizzie Fletcher as the winner over John Culberson. That's a pick for the Democrats. Election night not over yet, Mia.
And still early, relatively early. Reka Mudaraj, thanks so much. Well, folks, things got ugly at a polling place in northwest Harris County. An assistant election judge is accused of going on a racist rant against a voter. Rolanda Anthony tells us she was trying to settle some confusion about her home address when the assistant judge walked up to her and accused her of trying to change her address on Election Day. That's when the argument took a shocking turn.
When I questioned what was going on, she then said, had I worn my blackface makeup today, perhaps you can comprehend what I'm telling you.
The assistant judge was sent home and cited for public assault after she admitted to bumping Anthony during the argument. Anthony initially left the polling place but went back and was able to cast her vote.
All right, so Lizzie Fletcher has been called the winner tonight in the District 7 congressional race. This is a live look at her right now. She's about to speak to her supporters. You hear the cheers. First time running for office, Houston native Lizzie Fletcher upsetting the incumbent John Culberson.
Yeah, coming as a surprise here to some. Fletcher considered the newcomer not having the political experience nor resume like Culberson had. So an upset tonight. You know, we've been talking this evening the theme of females, women on the ballot. And here is Lizzie Fletcher.
This is amazing. it feels like the Academy Awards a little bit, so I wrote down what I was going to say, and hopefully they won't start the music too soon. I'm going to get rid of the page for if we lose. Oh my gosh, thank you. This is truly overwhelming, but now it is a party. I just heard something break. Thank you all so much for being here. Walking into this room is overwhelming. It is absolutely overwhelming to see the faces of so many people who have worked so hard to get us to this moment. In this room are people that I have known since birth. They're
listening to Lizzie Fletcher here, the winner in the race for District 7 with incumbent John Culberson. Lizzie Fletcher, the Democrat, taking the win there. Folks, straight ahead, the big changes coming in our forecast this week. Dave?
Big changes.
Yeah, Dave is up next.
This portion of the news is brought to you by International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers 716.
I've had a chronic cough and sinus issues. I've gone to dozens of specialists with no improvement.
I treated LaTanya with our balloon sinuplasty procedure, a solution I pioneered, addressing chronic sinus congestion, sinus pressure, and headaches. The in-office treatment only takes 20 minutes, with lasting success rates over 90%.
Balloon sinuplasty gave me my life back. Thank you, Dr. Kaplan.
Brush your teeth, comb your hair, do your makeup. It's all a part of your morning routine. But if you don't clean those brushes regularly, you can end up with more than just bronzer on your face. This makeup brush cleaner is supposed to wash and dry brushes all by itself. But is it worth it? Thursday on H-Town Rush.
How many do I want in the fight of my life?
Thousands. People who spend their days and their nights fighting you, cancer.
We see more types of you in one day
than others treat in their whole career.
Giving us unrivaled expertise.
My team
is 20,000 strong.
20,000 strong. 20,000 strong.
And together,
we're coming for you with everything we've got.
Choose MD Anderson first. Call us or visit findyourmdanderson.com.
Whatever your big job is, come into the Ram Black Friday sales event and get a great deal on the truck with the best resale value in the industry. And find out for yourself why more people are switching to Ram trucks than ever before. It's because of all the things you've built this year. Some are sweeter than others. Great deals going on all month at the Ram Black Friday sales event.
Now get an average $10,600 in total values on the all-new 2019 Ram 1500. And competitive pickup owners get an additional $1,000 bonus cash.
Tomorrow's the last warm day. We go to a high of 84. There is a rain chance tomorrow. You may want to take an umbrella as well. Then look at this. It's 60s. It's cooler on Thursday with rain. And then it's much chillier on Friday. 50s all day Friday, 100% rain chance. Saturday, 40s and 50s. Sunday, 40s and 50s. Monday, 50s. Tuesday, 40s and 50s. Ladies and gentlemen, Len and Mia, your fall wardrobe is about to get a workout.
I gotcha. Thank you, David. We'll be right back.
ABC covers more insects than anyone in Houston. That covers you from property line to property line. Our treatment is environmentally friendly, eliminating insects and protecting your home and your family. Depend on ABC Home and Commercial Services for your pest needs.
I finally did it. Popeye's new chicken sandwich. I've been trying to make the perfect chicken sandwich forever.
I was digging into that.
Looks like you're already digging in. My new chicken sandwich is buttermilk battered and served on toasted brioche in spicy or classic.
Imagine you're obeying tax laws. No one except you, because everyone feels there's zero enforcement. None. That's Houston construction. Lots of rules, no enforcement. UT's latest survey found 50% of Texas construction workers undocumented, having no OSHA or code training, and unknown skill capabilities. It's dangerous. The question, who cares? We know non-union contractors don't care, but IBEW 716 does. It's why we're trained, accredited, licensed, and pay taxes. IBEW 716.
Are you ready to take your Wi-Fi to the next level? Then you need Xfinity XFi, a more powerful way to stay connected. It gives you super fast speeds for all your devices, Wi-Fi coverage that leaves no room behind, and lets you control your network with the XFi app. It's the ultimate Wi-Fi experience. Xfinity XFi. Simple, easy, awesome.
Reinvent the patient's journey.
By paving the path with simplicity.
Explore every option.
Let evidence be your guide.
Collaborate with the precision of a space mission.
Orchestrate with the passion of a maestro.
Make it personal.
Be the connection that matters at the right time.
Be refreshing. Be different.
Be what's possible when more than 400 of today's brightest medical minds shine together.
Kelsey-Seybold Clinic, changing the way health cares.
Are you still putting in the new breaker box?
No, he's done. Now he's going to stand there for 12 years.
At John Moore, we stand behind our work. Across all our services, nobody beats our warranties.
Call John, get more and more.
Our goal when cleaning your pool is to give you the cleanest, most chemically balanced pool. ABC Home and Commercial Services recruits the best people in Houston to make sure you get the best service every time. Depend on ABC Home and Commercial Services for your pool needs.
This portion of the news is brought to you by Kelsey-Seybold Clinic, changing the way health cares.
Good morning, Houston. Tomorrow's here. We're Constellation. We power your home. And we do much more. Like our new electricity plan that includes protection for your AC, with alerts that will actually tell you if something's wrong, and no charge for repairs. All in one great electricity rate at constellation.com/getmore. An energy company that just sells electricity is so yesterday.
That's the sound of 50,000 Texans. That's how many choose Texas Oncology every year. So if you're fighting cancer, come see why we're their team.